Hey guys. This is part 4 of What If Naruto Time Traveled to the Future. Hit like and subscribe if you liked this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 27, Nobody. They should be here soon, Kabuto said softly to himself as he padded through the dim lab. He was very weak from the complete removal of Orochimaru's power from his body. In a way, that power had become a sustaining part of his being. Without it, he was hardly himself anymore. He was draped in a light-colored robe, body thin enough to easily see the bones underneath his skin. His hair hung in cropped strands around his face. He couldn't remember when he'd started wearing it down. Was this what dying felt like? With trembling hands, Kabuto picked up the round glasses that lay on a steel examining table and put them on his face. He pushed them up his nose with one finger. But really, there was no meaning in thinking he was or was not like himself. That was a superfluous observation at best, when his existence amounted to a great nothing, nothing but nothing. A nothing as easily replaced as it was thrown away. Ni-san! It was really him. It had to be him. Ni-san, wait! Tree branches slapped Sasuke's face and hands as he ran desperately toward the figure up ahead. This was just like one of the reoccurring dreams he had as a small child. Itachi right in front of him, but forever out of his reach. He'd always been better and did more at a younger age than him. Those dreams had continued long after the massacre, taking on a nightmarish, murderous quality. But this wasn't a dream, was it? Couldn't Itachi hear his brother calling out to him? Gritting his teeth, Sasuke's eyes melded into the inverted colors of his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. A large violet arm materialized beside him and reached out toward Itachi. But before it could make it all the way, a similar red hand formed and slapped it away. Itachi didn't so much as slow down or look back. Sasuke withdrew the hand with a stunned expression. There was no way it wasn't true. That was Itachi's Susanoo. Why? Sasuke demanded, a shout that came from the depths of the many years he'd wanted to ask that question. Why won't you stop? Listen to me. I'm sorry, Sasuke. I don't have time to talk right now. I know what you're doing, Sasuke said, putting on an extra burst of speed to get closer to his brother. You're trying to get to Kabuto before he can recover enough to bring you back under his control. Isn't that right? Itachi didn't answer at first. Maybe he hadn't expected Sasuke to be so aware about his situation. Eventually, he spoke up. If you know that much, then you understand why it's better for you to stay away from me. We can talk later. No! Sasuke slashed his hand through the air angrily. You can't treat me like when I was a child and say some other time, Sasuke. I'm not going to let you do whatever you want while I'm left in the dark. I need answers, and I'm not leaving until I get them. Itachi gave a quiet, almost imperceptible sigh. Then come along if you must. But I have to take care of things before there will be any time to talk. I hope you understand. Fine. That was good enough for now. He didn't know every detail about how the Edo Tensei worked, but he didn't want Itachi to be taken over like all the others. That would only delay him getting answers even more. They were approaching the lab where Kabuto supposedly was, and Itachi slowed down enough for Sasuke to finally catch up to him. His strides had become more hesitant. Sasuke realized he probably knew the general direction and distance of the hideout, but not its precise location. He sped forward to pass Itachi, heading where he knew the hidden entrance to the lab was. Oh, Sasuke! Don't run ahead! Itachi called. Sasuke turned halfway toward him with a triumphant smirk, then disappeared into a cleverly hidden trapdoor behind a boulder. Itachi followed after him quickly, but cautiously. Sasuke! He called in a low tone after they made it inside the hidden passageway. How did you know I was coming here? Did Orochimaru tell you where he left Kabuto? Yes. Sasuke let Itachi match his pace to walk beside him. He knew you would come here to try and undo the Edo Tensei. He also knew I'd want to hear about it. Sasuke. Itachi started, but Sasuke cut him off. I'm not a child anymore, and I-san. I know he only told me because he wanted me to come here. But I don't care. I had to see you again, to ask you about all the things I've learned since you died. Do you know why he wanted you to come here? Sasuke gave an unamused snort. Isn't it obvious? He doesn't want Kabuto's Edo Tensei to end. He wants me to stop you, or get in your way long enough that you fall back under Kabuto's control. The passageway was dark and narrow, but not very long. It descended underground in the short time they were talking, and now they reached the end. What faced them there was a plain door. No. Itachi put his hand on Sasuke's wrist just as he was about to turn the handle. If that were the case, why didn't he just kill Kabuto himself? That would make the Edo Tensei continue on indefinitely without any worries. Why would he endanger his plans based on what you might or might not do? Sasuke paused. He didn't like to admit it, but Itachi was right. Kabuto would be a loose end for Orochimaru, one he couldn't afford to leave laying around if he wanted to control everything. It would be much, much smarter for the Sannin to kill him. For that matter, wouldn't it make even more sense for Orochimaru to force Kabuto into releasing them? Why did he seem content to let Itachi and Nagato roam free? With so much at stake, Sasuke pulled his hand away. I don't know what he's planning. But if he set a trap for us here, I'm sure the two of us can handle it. Itachi stared at the door. His hand hovered in the air, as if he was about to open it, but wasn't sure if he wanted to. I thought you were in a hurry, Sasuke said. What's wrong? Nothing, Itachi said, hand dropping down by his side. Do you know where Kabuto will be? All that's here is a single lab, with a few smaller rooms to live in. We'll look in the lab first. Itachi nodded, and stepped aside to let Sasuke lead the way. Sasuke walked carefully. He was sure Itachi was thinking the same thing as him. What gain would the snake possibly get from them coming here? From what he understood, if they forced Kabuto to undo the Edo Tensei, the younger Naruto would go back home. Did Orochimaru want him to go back home? That seemed unlikely. Even if it was true, Orochimaru could have made Kabuto do it himself to ensure things went his way. No. There had to be something else. The entrance to the lab had a pair of swinging aluminum doors with long, skinny windows in them. A small hole in the floor made it possible to lock the doors with a sliding bolt. But they were not locked right now. Let me go in first, Itachi said softly, resting a hand on the door, ready to push it open. His eyes were already shifting into the Sharingan. Sasuke frowned, but he didn't protest. It didn't matter who walked in first. He would be part of what happened either way. Itachi pushed the door open slowly and walked in, Sasuke shadowing him. Both brothers were on the highest alert for danger. It was dark. The lab had large, round overhead lights, but they were currently shut off. The only light came from a multitude of steel worktables that were lit with low-hanging ceiling lamps, lined up in rows near the front of the lab. Itachi looked around and saw a set of switches on the wall. He put a hand on one that was down, hesitated for just a moment, and then flipped it up. The overhead lights came on, flooding the room with harsh artificial light. There was a crash from within the depths of the lab, and small creak immediately afterward, as if from a door. Itachi and Sasuke locked their eyes in the direction of the sound and made their way cautiously toward it. With all the lights on, the place looked overbright, almost unreal. The lamps gleamed off the shiny steel tables, and the white-tiled floor was almost painful to look at. The overhead lights hummed with power, creating constant, unnerving background noise to their careful steps. Kabuto, we know you're there, so make this simpler for everyone and come out now, Sasuke commanded. A nondescript door on the left wall swung slowly open with a creak. A large burgundy creature emerged from it in a slithery kind of way, stepping out gradually into the light with uncertain movements. It was Kabuto, swallowed up inside an oversized burgundy cloak. A thin hand appeared from one of the sleeves and pulled the large hood further down. It had a pattern on it that looked like a snake's eyes. Did you have to turn on the lights? Kabuto's familiar voice came from underneath the hood. That was mean of you. My poor eyes can't take it. Sasuke's Sharingan started to meld and change, and Itachi tensed at the shift in the air that always preceded Amaterasu. Sasuke, stop! He said sharply. Sasuke glared at him. The energy spike faded, but he didn't drop the Manjikyu. Itachi stepped forward. Don't kill him. We need any information he can give us about Orochimaru's plans. But if he dies, you'll be able to stay here as long as you want, Sasuke said through gritted his teeth. You said you would talk to me about everything. How are you going to do that if he takes over you again? That's very rude, you know, Itachi Sasuke-kun. I'm right here, Kabuto said lightly. You two aren't being very good guests. Why did Orochimaru decide to leave you here, considering the state you're in? Itachi asked, holding his arm out slightly towards Sasuke. It seems counterproductive to his plans. As weak as you are right now, it would be easy for me to overpower you and make you undo the jutsu holding Naruto here. Even if that failed, someone from our side could simply seal Nagato and undo the jutsu that way. Isn't that so? Why, then, did he set all this up? Kabuto raised his head up slightly. He was frowning within the depths of his hood. I am here because I am a failure Orochimaru-sama no longer wanted to keep around. That technique was the cause. After all, if you can recreate at any time, why tolerate failure? I thought I could find out who I was, but I ended up less than I was to begin with. He has no need for me anymore. Then we should just put you out of your misery, Sasuke said. He made to walk forward, but Itachi stopped him again. It's true, the answer I chose was the wrong one. Kabuto kept speaking morosely, as if he hadn't been interrupted. He put his face in his hands, voice gradually rising in pitch as he continued. I failed to discover who I was, and lost what little I had in the effort. Now I am nothing, nothing. I am going to die as nothing, for no reason. Damn this pointless existence. He swung the hand out suddenly, knocking glassware from the nearby table to the floor. The empty, sterile clean beakers broke and scattered pieces of broken glass across the floor. But even that amount of effort seemed to cost him. Kabuto leaned against the table after his outburst, breathing heavily. It was hard to tell if he was overcome with emotion, or if the small amount of physical exertion had made him lose his breath. Itachi observed him for a moment longer. Sasuke saw it too. The energy in Kabuto's body was faint. Maybe Orochimaru didn't have to bother about killing him. After losing his body to the bit of power he'd put into his veins, only to be left without that power, it looked like he was already dying. You can't do it, can you? Itachi said quietly. It's all you can do just to stand up. You can't control anyone anymore, or send Naruto home. That's why you're not a threat to his plans. Kabuto looked up at him, and there was a brief glint when his wire-rimmed glasses caught the light. What right do you have to pity me? He said acidly. You've always had something to go by, a village, a clan, even your own skill. You've never had to struggle with something as fundamental as who you are in the first place. You're wrong, Itachi said, lifting his hand yet again to hold Sasuke back as he tried to step forward. I know what it's like better than you think. All I knew were the things other people saw me as. A member of my clan, a citizen of Konoha. Unfortunately, there came a time when the two could no longer coexist. I had to kill the illusion of one identity to keep the other. In the end, I lost even that. But you didn't have a choice. Sasuke interrupted, unable to keep quiet any longer. I heard what really happened. Those Konoha bastards pushed the Uchiha to become what they were. Then they ordered you to kill there is always a choice, Itachi said, still looking at Kabuto. But it's not always what you think. Those decisions ultimately define you as a person. But it doesn't mean the choice is always free. When none of the options are what you really want, that is when the struggle for who you are arises. That's when it becomes easy to lose everything you thought you knew about yourself. What's wrong with trying to take matters into my own hands? Kabuto was breathing harshly, still leaning over the table. All I wanted was to get closer to perfection, to follow the one path that finally managed to capture my imagination. I wanted my ultimate pursuit to be the same as his, so that I could have the same presence, the same greatness. That's why I took Orochimaru-sama's power for my own. He was only revived because of me. And yet he looks down on me, all of you do. There is nothing wrong with emulating someone else that you see as praiseworthy. That's how we all learn, starting out. But trying to become someone else won't help you find out who you are. Nisan, why are you bothering to talk to him? Just get the information you want out of him, already. Sasuke said impatiently. Itachi's mouth pressed into a thin line, but he said, Do you know why Orochimaru wanted us to meet here? Do you know what his plans are for Naruto? Kabuto backed away from the table and looked at them. Madara knows how to find me, and he will do anything to get his hands on the Rinnegan. Maybe Orochimaru-sama hopes you and he will clash in the process. As for Sasuke-kun, Kabuto's voice regained some of its former smoothness. I don't know why he is here. Perhaps for the sake of a long-awaited family reunion. The hood of the burgundy cloak burst into black flames, and Kabuto jerked backward with a cry. Itachi moved quickly to pull the coat up over Kabuto's head and throw it down several feet away on the pristine tile, where it was soon completely engulfed with the otherworldly fire. Kabuto stumbled into the side of the table and fell onto his hands and knees, glasses skidding onto the floor in front of him. Uncovered, it was easier to see how the various transformations had affected his physical state. Kabuto looked very different from the last time Sasuke had seen him. He no longer had the scaly skin from Orochimaru's possession, but he looked almost as pale. His arms and legs were very thin, and his cropped hair fell limply around his face. Without his glasses, it's possible to see the dark bags under his eyes. "He isn't going to tell us what he knows," Sasuke said coldly. "He's just here to waste our time, so Orochimaru can do whatever he's doing without interference. If we want to get any real answers, he'll have to be put under a genjutsu. Why don't you just kill me instead?" Kabuto said, sounding surprisingly calm. He reached out to pick up his glasses. One of the lenses had a crack in it near the edge, but he put them back on anyway. He looked up at Sasuke. His face was thinner and gone now, but the glare was unmistakable. "I do not know if his body could withstand a genjutsu now. It very likely would kill him," Itachi warned. "Don't do it, Sasuke. This is also a choice. And every choice has its own consequence. Why should we leave him alive? He isn't going to last much longer, anyway." Sasuke looked down at Kabuto with his face wrinkled in contempt. "Orochimaru is next. And then, the village of Konoha. All of them who think they can use our clan and then throw them away like trash will suffer. The clan isn't everything. Clinging to it will only keep you chained to the past." Sasuke looked back at Itachi, but didn't respond. He hadn't expected nearly the same thing to be said by the revived souls of both his father and brother, those two, of all people, agreeing on the same thing. But he didn't want to accept it. All of it had happened before he could do anything. Something that affected him so deeply happened without his input at all. It was easy for them to say it was all over. But he didn't see the future anymore. Maybe Sasuke's thoughts showed on his face, or maybe Itachi just knew him that well. He said, "It might have been a mistake to hide everything from you. I didn't think there was anything you could do to change it, and knowing would have only put you in danger. I thought that, later on, not knowing would even allow you to be happy staying in the village. But now I think maybe I should have told you everything. Perhaps you could have changed things." Kabuto started to chuckle. He slowly climbed to his feet, holding onto a stool, and then the edge of the work table in order to prop himself up. "Oh, this is so very touching," he said with malicious mockery. "The long-estranged brothers, making up after everything they have lost. Just keep telling each other pretty lies to make yourselves feel better." Sasuke snarled and made to step forward again, but soon stopped. It wasn't even Itachi that stopped him this time. He saw the disruption in Kabuto's chakra. Perhaps even before the man felt it, something inky and vile suddenly bloomed in his chest, consuming the faint energy still remaining inside him. Kabuto flinched just a second later, letting out an agonized cry as he grasped at the invading presence in his chest. "What's happening?" Sasuke demanded, glancing over at Itachi quickly. He could see very clearly that this was not some bizarre act of Kabuto's. "Setsu," Itachi said. His eyes started to shift into the Manjikyu, as well. Black, vein-like lines sprouted and grew from above Kabuto's heart and across his chest, down his left arm, showing in places where the robe he wore exposed bare skin. It crawled up his face until it was half covered with an inky black mask. A round eye glowered at them from the darkness, and Kabuto's face cracked into a grin to rival that of Orochimaru. "You shouldn't have given it away so early, Kabuto." Black Zetsu's harsh voice came from the dark mask clinging to his body. Kabuto's arm started to raise up into the air. "Don't move!" Itachi commanded, but Zetsu slammed Kabuto's hand down to the ground. An array of black lines and seal marks splayed out onto the floor from his touch, right before Kabuto's body was tackled and pinned to the floor by the hand of Itachi's Susanoo. Sasuke stepped around his brother's reach and called forth his own glowing violet Susanoo, a crossbow materializing in its hands, aimed at the man and creature on the floor. "What did he do?" Sasuke asked tensely. "Did the summoning fail?" Nothing appeared. "No, whatever it was, it could have been summoned elsewhere," Itachi said, walking closer to Kabuto's prone body. He made sure to remain under the protection of the Susanoo's ribs as he got closer. When Kabuto had said that the enemy could find him, they didn't realize it meant Setsu had embedded tracking spores in Kabuto's body. Now Sasuke fully understood why Orochimaru would abandon him here. He had shed his former assistant like a skin, and made himself untraceable. "It seems everyone underestimated you, Itachi," Zetsu said. "You've managed to escape control, which means I can't do anything with you now. That makes this a little more difficult. I'll have to finish up quickly. You can't make hand signs anymore, now that Kabuto is pinned down," Itachi said. "There's nothing more you can do. Release him. I just used the last of his dwindling life energy. If I release him now, he will die. It's surprising a hypocrite like you cares. But it seems he doesn't know where Orochimaru went off to." Kabuto's uncovered eye was opened just a little bit, curved into a grimace. "Damn every one of you!" His eye roved around aimlessly for a moment, before focusing on Itachi's face. "Kill me, if you don't want them to know everything. Now that they have the real mad." Kabuto gasped and choked, as if all the air had suddenly been stolen from his lungs. His head fell back and his visible eye widened. They could see the life-sustaining energy in his body being blacked out, consumed from the inside by a parasitic monster. Sasuke's arrow landed between the fingers of the large hand holding Kabuto's body to the ground. It stuck into the infected arm and burst into flames. Itachi quickly withdrew the hand and ran forward to catch the dark, wriggling creature retreating from Kabuto's body. He trapped it under the hand again as it tried to slide away, but it bent and twisted and squeezed out through the smallest opening. Another arrow whisked through the air where it emerged, and the thing sank back down again. Itachi closed the Susanu's hand as closely around it as possible so it couldn't get away. "Now, Sasuke!" Sasuke ran forward and leapt onto the back of the giant hand, drawing his sword swiftly. He stabbed down through the smallest of spaces in between the skeletal fingers, and sent bright, high-pitched electric chakra down into the blade and the space underneath. He stayed there for several minutes, pouring electricity into the sword until the floor tiles started to crack, and he was certain nothing could have survived. Then he jumped backward, sheathing his sword and landing lightly beside his brother. Itachi carefully relaxed the hand. The white tile underneath was now charred and shattered into many sharp pieces. But the pitch-black mass was nowhere to be seen. "Did it work?" Sasuke asked. Itachi cursed softly to himself. "I have a bad feeling it managed to escape." His Susanoo slowly dissolved away, and his eyes changed back to normal. He turned and stepped toward Kabuto, who was still laying on the floor. The presence of Black Zetsu invading his body didn't leave any outward marks. The only thing that remained was a hole burned through his sleeve, and a red, shining burn on his arm. Itachi looked curiously at Sasuke, who avoided his gaze. He had extinguished the flames of Amaterasu himself, leaving Kabuto with only a small burn. "He's already dead," Sasuke said, coming up beside Itachi. "Eh?" They fell silent, and the soft hum of the overhead lights asserted itself again in the empty space. What had Kabuto been about to say? "They have the real Madara?" "Sasuke," Itachi started very quietly. "There's something I still have to do. It involves the allied shinobi force. You can follow if you want. But I have to go soon." Sasuke scoffed. "I shouldn't be surprised you want to put things off even more." He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were back to normal. "I meant what I said before. I'm going after Orochimaru for using our clan, and then I'm going after Konoha. Don't you care at all that the Uchiha have been pulled from their rest and forced to fight? Even our parents." Sasuke looked at him. "Going after Orochimaru by yourself is not wise. And the clan can still be put to rest, the same way as the other Edo Tensei. Why do you want to help Konoha and the rest of the alliance so much? Haven't you already done enough?" Anger was starting to creep into Sasuke's voice. He paused, however, seeing that a crow had suddenly materialized on Itachi's shoulder. "What are you doing?" "Sending a message to Kisame." Itachi pulled a small scroll out of his bag. "You are right. I shouldn't be here. I doubt the Alliance would even accept if I offered to help them directly. But that isn't what I want to do. My real concern is to help the younger Naruto get back to his own time. Even if it has nothing to do with me, there are people there that need him to return." He finished writing his message, and handed it to the crow. The bird took the scroll in its sharp beak, and then vanished in a burst of black feathers. Sasuke suspected Itachi meant him. Or rather, his younger self. Itachi wanted to help a version of Sasuke he would never see or meet, if Orochimaru's strange science project went back where it came from. "How will I find you again?" Sasuke said, frustrated. He didn't want to follow along, but he knew that Itachi would not stop until he did what he wanted to do. I can tell you where the last reported sighting of a large regiment of Uchiha was, Itachi said. Some people may be fighting them, but if you go, you might be able to ensure that more of them get sealed. Whether they are still there or not, I will meet you there after I do what I need to do. Is that good enough? And what are you doing exactly? I have to convince Naruto to go home. There may not be anywhere in this world that is safe for him now. Chapter 28 Thunder. The younger Naruto slumped in his chair, arms crossed. His deep scowl seemed to have no effect whatsoever on Shizen, who continued giving bright reassurances to her patient. Naruto's eyes tracked the man as he thanked Shizen and left, hopping slightly with a damaged foot. Shizen hummed as she started organizing medical supplies on a tray. When is someone going to come tell us what's going on out there? He blurted, unable to contain himself any longer. You just have to be patient, Naruto-kun, Shizen said, wagging a finger at him. We'll get a message as soon as headquarters hears anything. Naruto huffed in frustration. How had things ended up like this? Everything had been going so well. True, Itachi and Nagato had wanted to avoid the battle, but at least he still would have been out there. Now their group was split up, and he was under the watch of the allied shinobi force again. And that meant staying in the medical camp until some vague, indefinite moment when they figured out what to do with him. Naruto felt slightly betrayed by his older self, even though the elder had just been following Itachi's directions. Once he left the younger there under Shizen and Sakura's watch, he'd rushed off to go meet the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki. No doubt they'd see all kinds of action, while the younger was left sitting in a chair under the supervision of some medic nin. Shizen-ichan, why can't I fight? Naruto grumbled, knowing it was useless. I already proved I could do it. I can take on those white things, no problem. Yes, well, it was a good thing you didn't get captured. Shizen put her hands on her hips. I don't know what the older you was thinking, letting you go anywhere near the battlefield. Then again, he isn't much better. Muttering darkly, Shizen continued organizing with a bit more force than before. Come on. You're only saying that because Itachi and Nagato were the ones looking after me. Kakashi-sensei told me some people were upset about that. Naruto propped his feet up on a short stool and leaned back in the chair, balancing it on two legs. Shizen slammed an instrument down onto the metal tray with a loud clatter that nearly made Naruto lose his balance. He waved his arms around frantically for a second, teetering, before landing the chair back on four legs again. You don't know anything about the terror and suffering our village went through because of them, Shizen said. Her face was turning red, but she remained standing where she was. She gripped the edges of the metal tray. Naruto noticed her arms shaking. He stood up out of the chair, taken aback. Shizen-ichan. She stared down at the tray for a few seconds, then turned away to walk out of the tent's flap. Excuse me? Sakura came into the tent, walking around Shizen and watching the other kunoichi walk away. She put down a box of bandage rolls and turned back to Naruto, confused. What was that about? I don't know. Naruto flopped back into the chair. He felt a little guilty, but he wasn't sure why. She didn't like me talking about Itachi and Nagato, I guess. Was she really that worried about me? Sakura's eyes darkened. She turned to unpack the box. Probably. We all were. First Orochimaru comes after you in Suna, then you disappear into Amigakure where no one can contact you. All we had was size scroll, and that only goes one way. I guess. I didn't really think of it like that. Naruto admitted. He felt deflated. It seemed his older self was the only one from this time who knew those guys weren't actually bad. Shizen had it pretty rough during the attack. Sakura added softly. I mean, a lot of people did. Nagato's paths tore through the village, trying to get anyone to tell him where you were. He eventually discovered you weren't in the village, so he destroyed it. But Shizen was the one he found that out from. She still thinks it could have gone differently, but we all know it wasn't her fault. She was killed and brought back like all the others. Sakura looked over at Naruto, slightly pitying. He'd finally stopped fidgeting. Now he was sitting with shoulders slumped and eyes downcast, no longer in the mood to complain. It wasn't like he'd forgotten about the village's destruction, or who had done it, but there was such a gap between what he felt and what he knew. There was still something missing, something he didn't understand. And he was running out of time to figure it out. How much longer could he stay here, after all? If he didn't figure it out soon, how was he supposed to help everyone back in his own time? Sakura sighed. Naruto, I'm sorry, but... Naruto laced his fingers behind his head and leaned back. Nah, why would you be sorry? You guys had to protect everyone while the older me was gone. But I won't let it happen again. I'll find a way to stop Akatsuki before any of that happens, and save them, too. Sakura shook her head with an exasperated smile. You probably don't want to stay here in the medic camp, do you? I heard you got to fight a little against the Zetsu. You can say that again. But Sakura's words reminded him of something. Naruto put his arms down and looked at his hands. It was kind of weird. I've known for a while now this isn't my real body, but it was always easy to forget. Now, when I think about it, I haven't eaten anything since the day you guys left for war. And since I left AIM, I haven't even felt hungry or thirsty or had to use the toilet at all. And when I was fighting and got cut by a sword, I didn't bleed either. Sakura sat down on a stool in front of him. I've done autopsies on those things. While they're good at imitating people, on the inside they have nothing that can be considered human. I know that wasn't the case for you. But since your body is based off them, it must have the ability to change as well. Maybe, when you believed you were in your real body, it transformed to match what you thought. Or maybe it just can't keep up a total imitation forever. I guess that makes sense, Naruto said reluctantly. He vaguely remembered that Orochimaru, when he was disguised as the Wind Daimyo, had seemed surprised and curious when he said he was hungry. There you are, Tebeo. Naruto looked up to see his older self grinning at him from the tent door. He wasn't in the Kyuubi chakra mode. Aniki! He hopped out of the chair. What are you doing here? Weren't you supposed to go meet up with the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki? Killer Bee. His older self nodded. I did, but I sent a clone back here to stay with you. I know it sucks to have to stay in one place. Plus, if anything happens, boss'll know about it right away. Hey, Sakura-chan, where are you going? I'm getting out of here while I still can, she said, looking back after pushing open the tent door. Have fun, but try not to explode anything. Suit yourself. The Bunshin plopped down on the stool she left. Have you heard anything about what happened to Itachi and Nagato? The younger asked immediately. They must have made it in time to stop Kabuto from doing anything, so they're probably on their way back here. Do you know what you're gonna do? No, the younger admitted. I don't want to leave while everything's still going on here, but I heard what you guys were talking about before I came in. The Bunshin crossed his arms. How is the Kyuubi doing? Huh? I mean, that body you're in is supposed to keep it locked up extra tight, right? Have you seen if it's still doing okay in there? I know. It wasn't like he made it a habit to talk to the Kyuubi anyway, but it did seem like he hadn't heard from it in a while. Especially since they had been talking on a semi-regular basis by the end of his time in Suna. You think I should check? Is that what you're saying? His older self nodded. Oh, okay. Naruto had only done this a few times already, but he was willing to give it a try. He sat back in the chair and closed his eyes, trying to focus within. He subconsciously went through the same process as when he tried meditating for sage mode. He sat very still, relaxing and trying to create a mental image of what he wanted to do. He could faintly feel the presence of natural energy hovering around him like it always did, but he didn't try to reach out to it right now. Instead, he tried to reach inward, within this strange body. It was more difficult than he expected. For a moment, Naruto felt like he was swimming in a dark void. He realized with sudden, stark clarity that he was no longer sitting, but standing in ankle-deep water. Naruto opened his eyes, and it was a little lighter, but not by much. The thin lights that lined the walls were still visible, but their light had dimmed considerably since the last time he was here. He looked up at the massive bar door in front of him, its height lost in the darkness. Kyuubi? Naruto said, walking up to the bars and looking in. Hey, Kyuubi! Are you taking a nap or something? He stared hard into the darkness inside the cage, trying to see an eye, a silhouette, anything. Once he listened, he thought he could hear something very large breathing. Did the Kyuubi even have to breathe? Regardless, he took it as a relatively good sign. Naruto looked down at the water, then slowly and cautiously sidled through the bars. Hoping the Kyuubi wouldn't be in a head-ripping mood if he woke him up, Naruto walked carefully toward the breathing. A great dark outline soon loomed in front of him, and when he reached out his hands, he could feel warm fur. Hey! He called, trying to shake the hopelessly small patch of fur he could reach. Naruto's eyes were starting to adjust to the gloom, and he was fairly certain he was standing beside one of the Kyuubi's gigantic paws. He saw the outline of a sharp claw, and backed up several paces. Hey, wake up! Naruto cupped his hands over his mouth as he walked backward toward the bars, just in case. You big, stinky, ugly old fox! Hi. I bet you can't get me! Nyeh! Nothing changed. There wasn't so much as a growl or a twitch of an ear. Naruto's back hit the bars and he turned to walk through them. He stood on the other side and stared into the cage for a few minutes longer, hoping something would happen. But nothing did. The fox was unconscious, and didn't seem to be waking up anytime soon. Was it because of the plant body? Was it slowly suffocating him, as the Kyuubi himself had said? How long had it been like this? Naruto clenched his hands around the bars to stop them from shaking. He didn't like the fox, but it was something that had always been there. And he didn't know what would happen if it disappeared. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have listened to you sooner. I promise we'll go home soon. Naruto opened his eyes and saw the bunshin of his older self watching him intently. Well? It's not good. The Kyuubi is still there, but it won't wake up no matter how much I shout. I think the plant body is taking all its energy, or something like that. The bunshin crossed his arms and tilted his head in a thinking pose. That doesn't sound good. He hit a fist in his palm. Itachi and Nagato should be on the way back by now, right? You think so? The younger perked up, sensing an adventure. Probably? The bunshin scratched the back of his head. Only if Itachi made it to Kabuto in time. But I should be able to sense where they are and if they're under control. If you want to get back as soon as possible, I can take you to them. Being presented with a decision so immediately made him freeze up. But then he thought of the Kyuubi, and nodded. You're right, I don't want to leave, but the Kyuubi needs help more, and going back is probably the only way. I know you guys will be alright. The bunshin stood. Okay. Ready to sneak out from under the ASF's nose? The younger Naruto grinned in response. Kisame looked up as a large black crow flapped down from the sky, cawing loudly. He held out his arm and let the bird land on it. He picked the very small scroll out of its beak and unrolled it. Something must have happened. Kisame murmured. After all the work I put in, too. You're merciless, Itachi-san. Kisame reached inside his coat, but suddenly he looked up, sensing something. His mouth grew into a sharp-toothed grin. If he hadn't lost Samahata, he might have noticed it before now. Pretty sneaky to use that crow to find me, he said, turning as Toby materialized behind him. So you were alive, after all, Toby said, stalking toward him and stopping just out of reach. I'll be taking that now. He held out a hand toward Kisame. But Kisame just kept grinning. Toby's eyes narrowed underneath the mask as a globe of water suddenly erupted around Kisame. Now Toby understood. In his former life, Kisame had been tasked with protecting important information no matter what the cost. He acted unhesitatingly, and never once failed to rob the enemy of whatever they were trying to get. However, Toby's Sharingan tracked Kisame's movement inside the bubble, spotting the sealing scroll in his hand. He rushed toward it, but it was too late. Several small sharks appeared and destroyed everything within. The water became dark and stained with blood. And then it was clear again. Kisame was whole again. He was about to summon the sharks, but Toby kept moving and phased his hand through the place he knew the sealing scroll to be. He came through the other side just before the ancient creatures started roiling around hungrily in the water. Toby straightened from his stance and took off the mask. The one hidden eye faded into a blank, dead white. He looked at the scroll. It was wet with water, but otherwise unscathed. Finally, sacrificing one eye for two was not a bad trade at all. At the Allied Shinobi Force headquarters, powerful sensor types from every country in the Alliance monitored the status of the war. At the command desk was I, the Reikage, Tsunade, the Hokage, Naro Shikaku, lead strategist, and Mabui, personal assistant to the Reikage. The battle is turning on all fronts, Shikaku said, looking down at the map that they had spread on the table. Naruto has been a big help, flushing out the imposters among our ranks. We can finally move again. Everyone has prioritized protecting his bunshin so the Uchiha can't dispel them before he's had a chance, and it's working. And the Uchiha situation near the seafront? When can we send help there? I said, tapping a finger on the table. They'd learned that Orochimaru had split his Edo Uchiha army into several parts. Most were providing support at the major battlefields, working together very effectively to interfere with their attempts to flush out the Zetsu clones. Their fame in the arena of war throughout history was apparently well justified. The only thing that worked so far to counter them was to focus on defense, keeping Naruto's Bunshin around long enough to find the imposters. Fortunately, they were finally gaining some ground with their efforts. But there was another group, the largest Edo Tensei-only unit on the field so far. It was composed of around 20 Uchiha, including the last clan head and his wife, and many well-known warriors from previous eras. They were clearly a very dangerous force, but they had yet to join any of the battles. Their destination was unknown, but one of the ASF's units had caught them near the seafront, trying to stall them until backup could arrive. The ones facing the Uchiha-only unit are those from Kakashi's group, along with a few others, Shikaka said. It's a small group cobbled together from a few different units. It's unlikely they will be able to hold out for an extended battle. What about Naruto? Has he managed to send any help to them? Tsunade asked. At the last report, no. The moment his Bunshin showed up, the Uchiha all went after it, and there weren't enough of our own people there to defend it. The Uchiha are able to attack very quickly, leaving little room for a counterattack. So? What do we do then? We can't let them get wherever they're trying to go, I growled. He looked across at Tsunade. If Konoha's clans weren't so lax about protecting the remains of their best warriors, we wouldn't be in this mess. Tsunade gave an angry TSK and looked away, toward the large globe of water in the center of the room. As if the village ever had a say in what the Uchiha chose to do. The bigger concern is that Orochimaru managed to collect so many of them. Despite what you think, it couldn't have been easy. This isn't the time to be talking about whose fault it is, Shikaka said impatiently. We could let them go for the time being, that is an option. Or we could move some troops there, which could make progress at the other battlefields even slower. However, they are fairly close to the seafront battle. If our people can hold on long enough for things there to be decided, backup can come to them quickly from that area. I gave a dubious hum. Tsunade crossed her arms, not convinced. It depends on how much longer that takes, she said. If the seafront battle isn't going to be won very soon, we should stop fighting the Uchiha and follow them instead. If everyone gets killed, the Uchiha will escape anyway. That could be just as risky as letting them go outright, Tsunade-sama. We don't know what their objective is, Shikaka said. Still, every other option risks losing the ones fighting now. We'll ask them how much longer they think they can hold on, then decide from there which course of action to take. They won't keep up much longer without help. That's for sure, I said. But with all our forces tied up in other battles, who else can give it to them? Sasuke made his way toward the location Itachi had told him about, jumping forcefully from tree branch to tree branch. He had too many things to think about, and none of them he actually wanted to. One of those things was what he was doing at this very moment. He had to trust that Itachi would keep his word and meet him at the specified place. That was the problem. He should never have let Itachi out of his sight after finally finding him. Sasuke told himself that following Itachi to the ASF would be more trouble than it was worth, and he would simply chase him again if he failed to show up. But the truth was comprised of two mildly disturbing things. He did trust Itachi, and he did not want to see the supposed younger Naruto. But if it did happen to be true, then what? What did it matter? It didn't. The younger Naruto had nothing to do with him. It would just be too much of a hassle to get close to the allied shinobi force right now. He still had his other goals, and they were far from the battlefield. As soon as Itachi told him everything there was to know, he would be making his way toward Konoha. Seeing the Uchiha used as puppets again would strengthen his resolve all the more. At least, that was what Sasuke kept telling himself. He wanted to believe Itachi's attitude toward the clan and village had no effect on his own opinions. But looking up to and idolizing someone was a tough habit to break. He was getting close now to the place Itachi had told him about. This was where, as of several hours ago at least, a large group of Edo Tensei Uchiha had been spotted. Sasuke jumped down from the trees and walked at a slower pace, keeping all his senses alert. He couldn't hear anything going on in this immediate area. Was this the right place? Sasuke narrowed his eyes and kept walking toward a break in the trees. There was a sizable field here, a mix of rocky ground and grass. Sasuke bent down to pull out a kunai that was wedged deep in the soil. There were several of them lined up right here, and when he looked up, he saw more scattered throughout the field. So the Edo Uchiha had been here, and it looked like they had a run-in with the allied shinobi force. But then what? Sasuke didn't want to wander too far from the place where he was supposed to meet Itachi, but he decided to keep going a little longer. If they were close, there might still be time to catch up. He went as quickly as possible, keeping an eye out for any traps or people. As he went along, the signs of fighting got more intense, and he even found a couple of dead shinobi along the way. And then he heard the clash of weapons and people calling instructions to one another up ahead. Sasuke kept himself hidden and looked out of the trees. The Edo Uchiha were there, and some living shinobi were fighting against them. There were a couple of Iwanin trying to block their way with tall walls of earth. He saw one with a radio, and 3 nearby working together to try to separate and seal some of the Uchiha. He remembered seeing the pale one before. That was the one who had been with Naruto and Sakura when they came to find him. The one with the ink creatures. The other was slightly more familiar, Asuna shinobi they had taken the exams with. The last he did not know, but he was swordsman wearing a Kumo uniform. Even though Sasuke didn't know him, there was a good chance the Kumonin already considered him a mortal enemy, given the Raikage's feelings about him. From a glance, it was easy to see the Alliance's troops were outnumbered. Unlucky for them. It would be a tough battle even if they had equal numbers. The way things were now, they were likely to get slaughtered. Sasuke stepped out into the open. It didn't take long before the 3 near him took notice. Sasuke! The pale one said, "Sai," that was what they had called him. The other 2 whirled around, on guard immediately. "What are you doing here?" the Kumonin asked, putting a hand to his sword and narrowing his eyes. All these other people could get annoying really quickly. But until Itachi finally arrived, the extra fighting power would probably be necessary. "I want to help," Sasuke said. "You're working on sealing them, right?" They looked at him like he had grown a second head. Sasuke felt his impatience growing. There was no time for this. Couldn't they understand that he hated seeing his clansmen being used this way? Sasuke looked over and noticed the shinobi with the radio, a Konohanin he didn't recognize, was staring at him. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before everyone noticed him, and wasted their time gawking instead of fighting. The Konohanin fumbled for a moment with the receiver in his hands, then started frantically speaking into it. "HQ, do you copy?" "Yes, I know." "No, it isn't that, it's Uchiha." The radio and battery pack strapped to the man's back was suddenly crushed, stabbed through with the sharp, skeletal fingertips of Sasuke's Susanoo. The Konohanin dropped the pack and put some distance between himself and the outreaching arm very quickly. "I don't need them interfering with what I'm doing. I'm not here to fight against the allied shinobi force. Not yet, anyway." He couldn't quite take on the 5 great shinobi nations just yet, especially not alone. For now, Konoha was all he was after. "Yeah, they're your clan, so that makes sense and all," the Suna puppet master said, Kankuro. The Kazekage's brother. He'd been at the 5 Kage summit. "But do you really think you can show up here and join up with us because it suits your needs at the time? And what are we supposed to do now that you've destroyed our radio? If the fight moves again, we won't be able to tell HQ." Sasuke ignored Kankuro and continued looking around the battlefield, examining the situation. Why did it have to be this particular group of people? They all had a reason to dislike him. Finally he answered Kankuro. "From where I'm standing, it doesn't look like you're in a position to refuse. Those walls won't slow them down for long. And while we're over here talking, your allies over there are even more outnumbered than they were before. Do you have any sealers?" "I'm the only sealer here," Sai said. He was propping up a very large scroll. "We haven't managed to restrain any of them long enough for me to seal them. It takes a little bit of time." "Fine. We'll have to make do with that until my brother gets here. You other 2, concentrate on protecting him. I will take your places in the fight." The swordsman from Kumo gave him a hard glare, clenching his teeth around the small lollipop in his mouth. Kankuro looked even more irritated that Sasuke was trying to take command. But Sasuke didn't wait for them to make up their minds. He jumped into battle, keeping his Susanoo up as a shield. Sai put his scroll down on the ground and rolled it out, prepared to start sealing whenever possible. "That arrogant bastard," Kankuro growled. "If there is anyone who can restrain our targets, it's me. Olmo, can you stay here and protect Sai?" Olmo looked down at Sai, and then back at Kankuro, and sighed. "I'll do my best." But what did he mean by "until his brother gets here"? "Sakura-chan." Sakura looked up to see the older Naruto's Kage Bunshin waving at her cheerily. He was walking through the camp toward the row of open-air sinks, where she was. Sakura turned on a faucet with the side of her hand, and put her soapy hands under the flow. Hey, Naruto. What's up? I thought you would still be with the little you right now. Well, I had to leave to go meet up with Byakugan, remember? The Bunshin scratched its head, looking perplexed. But I decided to send a Bunshin back here to spend some time with the younger me, since I don't know how long it'll be before he has to go home. Do you know where he is? Sakura stared at the Bunshin, letting the faucet water continue to run. Her eyes slowly widened as the seconds ticked by. Sakura-chan? What's wrong? You mean, you didn't send a Bunshin here earlier today? Huh? What do you mean? Sakura didn't take the time to give him an answer. She forcefully turned off the spigots and started running toward the row of tents, heart pounding. No, not again. Naruto had scanned this place just a few hours ago. It couldn't be. Hey. Confused, the Bunshin started running after her. Sakura dashed all the way to the examining room where she had left the younger Naruto alone, prepared to knock some heads the second she went in. The canvas door flew open, flapping loudly and pulling against the tent's metal frame, causing the whole structure to sway. It was empty. They were already gone. Chapter 29, Lightning. Have you been able to sense them? The younger Naruto asked, looking around as he and his older self's Bunshin jumped through the trees. They were in the same forested area that covered this entire region, but Naruto didn't really recognize where they were. It wasn't the same way they had traveled to the medical camp. Hey! They made it in time, the Bunshin said. He put on an extra burst of speed that forced the younger to scramble to catch up. I'll be glad to find out what happened with Kabuto, Naruto said, focusing hard on dodging the increasingly thick growth of trees. I mean, it could have been a disaster if he'd managed to take control of them. I guess that's all the more reason to seal Nagato and send me back. He couldn't quite stop the twinge of disappointment in his voice. Why'd you say it like that? Don't you want to go home? The Bunshin looked over at him, navigating with ease despite taking his eyes off the path ahead. I mean, yeah, of course I do. That's what I've been trying to do this whole time. And I know there's not much else I can do to help in the war. It's just, that's the thing. What if something happens after I leave, and I completely miss hearing about it? The Bunshin nodded. That's the real reason you've been putting it off. Yeah. I know about the war, but I won't know how it ends if I leave now. What if everyone ends up dying? How can I stop it if I don't know? And I mean, I'm obviously gonna try to keep it from happening in the first place, but what if it happens anyway? I won't know how we can win it. You still want to save everyone, even though they've been keeping secrets the whole time you've been here? The Bunshin said it so quietly that at first, Naruto thought he had misheard. But no, a few seconds lapsed, and the meaning of what his older self said didn't change in the slightest, no matter how he rolled it over in his mind. Oh, of course I do. Wouldn't you do the same thing? You said you were never giving up on Sasuke, even after all this time, right? I'm not giving up either. Then that's your answer. You know you want to make things better, even though you don't know everything. Even though. Naruto frowned. When Madara captured me, he said what we want is the same. He's kind of right, isn't he? He wants to erase all the bad things that have happened in this world, and replace them with something he thinks is better. Like he can decide that. I don't think it's the same. His older self murmured, and Naruto looked over at him hopefully. Bad things will always happen. That's the way it is. Madara's trying to keep the world from changing. He just wants to get back something that was gone a long time ago. A dead end. When you think about it, it's completely different. You learn something, then change what you do because of it. That's how anyone grows. Naruto crossed his arms and frowned confusedly. Even though it seemed like a compliment, it was not something he would have expected his older self to say. There was something slightly cold about that way of thinking. He watched his older self out of the corner of his eye. I don't get what you're talking about. Are you saying I should go back and change things, just because I can? Actually, no. I think your work here is far from over. What do you? Naruto broke off when he heard a sharp sound, and looked down to see a length of thin wire looping around him. It tightened up around his chest painfully, and he fell out of the air mid-jump and landed hard on the ground with a loud grunt. He rolled over and scrambled to his feet as quickly as he could with his arms trapped down by his sides. His eyes darted around in search of who had attacked him, dread quickly growing at the thought that he already knew. That was when his older self dropped down from the trees above and started walking toward him, a smirk on his face. It didn't look right. It wasn't the bright grin he usually had, or even the sly sort of smile he would get while pulling a prank. This smile didn't look pleasant at all, and it cast a shadow over his normally open face. What the hell is going on? Naruto shouted out, stepping backwards. His back bumped against a tree. I am not your older self, the fake Bunshin said. You still have a lot to learn. I thought you would have grown wiser after I fooled you back in Suna. Then again, maybe it's not fair if I pretend to be someone you actually trust. Orochimaru. Naruto narrowed his eyes and widened his stance. Not exactly, the fake said, still speaking in his older self's voice. It was very eerie. He stepped closer slowly, unconcerned. This is just an ordinary Zetsu clone imitating his form. It works well, doesn't it? It's already caused the ASF quite a bit of trouble, but they let it walk right into the medic camp. Naruto flexed his arms, trying to create a gap in the wire, but it only tightened around him more. He hissed as the wire bit into his skin. It didn't bleed, but it still hurt. I brought you here because your vessel is corrupt, incomplete. Impressive for a first attempt, certainly, but it will not do for much longer. My connection with you is eroding, as is your connection with the QB. Not only that, but when the power leaks out of you, it causes your body to react. That was made very clear to me when you lost control in Suna. I've built a better one for you, but to ensure a smooth transfer, measures must be taken. Naruto looked up and to either side, trying to come up with an escape plan. But he only had a couple of seconds to think before Orochimaru attacked. Naruto looked back and saw the clone fake right in front of him, reaching its hand back with blue flames at each of its fingertips. It reached back and slammed the hand into Naruto's stomach. There was pain, but it was a strange kind of pain. It was an uncomfortable mixture of burning and nausea in his stomach. Naruto bent double and fell down to his knees as vertigo washed over him, feeling like he might throw up, but not knowing if it was even possible anymore. Orochimaru had done something like this to him once already, in the other timeline. It was just as unpleasant the second time around. As you may already know, your seal is designed to gradually mix yours and the QB's chakra. I've created a barrier that will block the interchange between them for a while. Hopefully it will slow the process of the Biju's chakra being leached away. Not to worry though. The transfer will. The fake's words were cut off very suddenly. Naruto heard and felt a powerful gust, and got up on his knees quickly enough to see large chunks of the plant clone's body flying through the air, slapping against tree trunks and bushes, completely torn to shreds. Scrambling to his feet again, Naruto turned toward the source of the razor-sharp wind and saw, Nagato? Nagato! He called out, but hesitantly. Not only was he unsure about assuming anyone's identity, after what had just happened, but Nagato's expression was stormy. Intimidating. The hint of killing intent streaming from him was heavy, almost suffocating. It was very different from what Naruto was used to, just like when they fought Orochimaru in AIM. It was like it belonged to a different person altogether. Nagato seemed to notice this. He stopped looking at the decimated remains of the clone, and came toward him, face softening. The stormy feeling in the air dissolved, like the sun after a rain. Nagato saw the wire, and drew a kunai out to cut it. Are you alright, Naruto? What happened? He asked quietly, hands moving quickly in their work, wire snapping and unraveling at Naruto's feet. Naruto still felt shocked from the very brief incident. It happened so quickly, he hadn't had time to get geared up for a fight. At least Orochimaru hadn't actually been here. Otherwise, that thing probably would have put up more of a struggle. What are you doing here? I thought you went to your summon's place. They brought me back once I knew Kabuto was defeated. Nagato looked him over. Orochimaru used the Zetsu? Yeah. He sent that clone thing to the medic camp, pretending to be the older me. We snuck out. Naruto admitted sheepishly. He looked up and saw that Itachi had now entered the clearing, following slowly behind while scanning the surrounding area. Itachi! Orochimaru knew I would run to find Kabuto right away, Itachi said, looking over at the destroyed clone as he walked. He went around us, rather than facing us directly this time. I wonder how long he was planning something like this. Well, what happened with you guys? Naruto blurted out, remembering. He wrestled the cut wire off of himself and looked back at Nagato. And how did you know that was a fake so easily? The Zetsu copies are usually undetectable, except by your older self. But I couldn't see any hint of the QB's chakra in the fake. That is one thing they are not able to replicate. Aside from that, the situation made it fairly clear. You can see it? That creeped Naruto out slightly. He was familiar with the idea of Jujutsu, and people that could see chakra, of course. He just wasn't sure how many people could see the beast sealed inside of him. No one had ever mentioned anything like that before. Nagato's eyes shifted to his stomach. What did he do to the seal? Well. Naruto lifted up his shirt to look at it. He didn't have that sick, burning feeling anymore, but he could see that a different seal had been superimposed on his own. Both seals were already fading out of sight. He said it was to keep the Kyuubi's chakra from leaking out, since this body is trying to absorb it. And he said he's made a body that can hold it better. That creeped Naruto out even worse. He dropped his shirt and made an exaggerated gagging sound. I don't want to be like him, and just go around pulling my face off, or stick my neck out, or all the other weird stuff he does. I think it's pretty clear he will try to take you away again sometime soon, Itachi said. I don't know how he plans to do that, but we need to get you back home as soon as possible, before he has a chance. Naruto knew this part was coming. They were right. Okay, he said reluctantly. I guess it's about time for me to be going home. I know I'll only keep everybody worried if I stay here. I've already found out a lot of stuff, so I'll just try to get stronger as quickly as I can once I get back. It'll be a while before the war starts, and I can come up with a way to stop it before then. You did very well the first time around, with no prior warning at all. Just do your best, and don't try to take on everything by yourself. Nagato put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Yes, Itachi agreed. I think that's what you will most have to learn in the coming years. Don't let your desire to protect everyone keep you from relying on them. When you gain power, it is easy to become arrogant, and eventually distant from the people around you. That is what happened to me, and I failed in the end. You will fail, too, if you allow what you know to keep you from trusting in your friends. Knowing the future is its own kind of power, and it can lead you astray just as any other. But with Sasuke, Naruto cast his eyes downward. I still have no idea how to help him. I don't want him to end up like he is in this time, but if I go back and he's already gone, I'll have to catch up. I don't have years to figure out what to do. I have faith in you. Itachi tilted his head with a faint smile. It may be too late to stop Sasuke from leaving the village, but if you do what you have always done, you will be able to succeed eventually. It may not seem like it from your perspective, but Sasuke is still very young. We are older and have done even worse things than him. When you compare that, it isn't too late for him in the long run. I guess you're right. Itachi's gaze drifted to the treeling. Speaking of Sasuke, I saw him not long ago. I can't stay around here much longer. I promised I would go with him to help with the Edo Uchiha. Wait! Naruto cried as Itachi made to turn. How did you see Sasuke? I thought you had gone to stop Kabuto. You guys still haven't told me what happened. He looked from Itachi to Nagato. They had obviously managed to stay in control of themselves, but aside from that, he had no clue what was going on. I lost consciousness for a moment, but it was not long. Kabuto was too weak for it to hold, Nagato said. It wasn't long enough for me to cause any trouble, and I'd already left by then. When I sensed he was gone, I met back up with Itachi. He told me how Kabuto died. He died. Naruto gaped at Itachi. Itachi nodded. Sasuke heard about the situation from Orochimaru, and he went there to try to find me. Kabuto was already dying by the time we got there. The transformation he went through was too complete to be reversible. Once Orochimaru left his body, it could no longer survive without the presence of his cells. I think the amount of time he managed to hold on was impressive in itself, but then, he was an accomplished medical nin who was very familiar with the process. He must have known what would happen. But why would Orochimaru do that? Naruto demanded, clenching his fists. I thought they were friends. Or, at least, on the same side. Haven't they been working together for years? That was one thing he could never, ever accept. No matter how bad someone was, turning your back on a comrade was the lowest of the low. It seemed he'd lost integrity in Orochimaru's eyes, foregoing such lengths to emulate him. Itachi murmured, it was cruel, but unavoidable, perhaps. Without outside help, Orochimaru had to sacrifice his subordinate in order to fully return. He was also trying to slip away from the spores implanted on Kabuto by Zetsu. Black Zetsu appeared while we were there, trying to use Kabuto to find out information and to control us. In the end, That was what killed him. Naruto was surprised to find himself feeling kind of sorry for Kabuto. It was partly because of him that Naruto had been thrown into this dangerous future in the first place. But it was sad to die like that, abandoned by the one he served for so long. It reminded Naruto of the way Haku had died. He wondered if, deep down, Orochimaru felt sad about it at all, the way Zabuza had. Was there any room for remorse in his heart, at all? I should leave now, Itachi said after a pause. You can go back to the medical camp if you want to say goodbye, but don't wait around for anyone who isn't there. We don't know what Orochimaru will try next to get past your guard. For all we know, he may try to interfere with us sending you back. Alright. Naruto hated saying goodbye, and this occasion was even worse than usual. But he had to go back, right? He didn't belong here. And even if he never saw this version of his friends again, he would be with something just like them in 4 years' time. Come on, Nagato said softly, motioning for Naruto to travel along beside him. I came back at the start of all this too, remember? We'll both go home. Even with the addition of Sasuke, things on the Uchiha front were not coming along easily. With Sasuke, Kankuro, and the others doing everything they could to detain the Edo Uchiha, they had still only managed to seal a few of them. A slight improvement, but not the kind of success Sasuke had hoped to bring to their efforts. The problem was this group of Uchiha did not seem particularly interested in fighting them head-on. They were bent with a single-minded focus on escaping by any means necessary, and it took a lot of effort and energy just to keep them all contained within one area. They blocked and dodged and jumped around them with tireless bodies, seemingly content to drag out the stalemate until their living opponents got tired. And they wouldn't have to wait much longer, either. The Iwanin were running out of chakra from continually blocking them with walls of earth, and the others were low on weapons and stamina. The only ones still fighting decently were Sasuke and Kankuro. Omoi and Sai stayed back from the main fighting, ready to help seal on a moment's notice. A pair of sword-wielding Uchiha ran and vaulted over the most recent earth wall as if it wasn't even there. Instead of trying to run this time, they jumped down on the other side and drew their swords in midair. They descended toward the exposed necks of the exhausted Iwanin. One looked up in time to see that their enemy was actually attacking, shouted, "Look out!" and tried pushing the other one out of the way. The two would have almost certainly been beheaded, except just as the Edo Uchiha bore down on them, a long violet arm reached out and grabbed the Edo Uchiha out of the air. Sasuke hurled them toward Omoi, who lined up with the incoming enemies and gave a long, graceful slice. The swords of the Uchiha clattered to the ground as their arms were disconnected, ash-like pieces flying through the air. The Uchiha themselves fell to the ground shortly after, bodies rapidly regenerating. "Now, Sai!" Omoi yelled. "Right." Sai quickly scrawled ink with an expert hand over the large, blank scroll in front of him. Two tigers roared into life from the surface of the paper and pounced on the Uchiha, digging in with teeth and claws to drag their stolen souls into the seal. "At this rate, we won't be able to contain them," Sasuke said, looking around at the remaining fighters, all of whom were reaching their limits. "If they start fighting back when people get sloppy, none of you will stand a chance. Anyone who will not be of use in this fight should leave now." "Sasuke! You're not the one who gets to make that call!" Kankuro shouted from where he was locked in a stalemate with several Uchiha. Sasuke ignored him and swept his eyes over the battlefield, trying to locate his parents again. He knew they were here. He had caught a glimpse of them just a moment ago, before he turned to help with the ones that jumped over the wall. "Sorry I'm late." He heard a familiar voice beside him. Sasuke turned and gave a snort. "Itachi. It's about time." Itachi looked around. "This isn't a battle that can be won with the numbers here. If I'm not mistaken, this is the Alliance's ambush unit. They aren't meant for an extended battle. Forget them. They won't listen to what we have to say, anyway. The two of us can." Sasuke stopped talking when he finally caught sight of his father again. He started moving that way, but suddenly the movement of the controlled Edo Uchiha changed. It was as if they decided all at once to group into small clusters of 2 or 3 and make a serious run for it. They put on bursts of speed, plowing through the weakening defenses of the allied shinobi force and running off, all in different directions. Sasuke cursed and started running after his parents again. The two of them had grouped together, and they managed to break through like all the rest. "Sasuke!" Itachi called, but he followed soon after. It wasn't lost on Sasuke that the Uchiha's attack pattern suddenly changed when Itachi arrived. He'd heard that this particular batch of Edo Tensei had some unknown objective. If they had only been humoring the ASF up until now, it was possible that Itachi's presence made it too troublesome for them to continue the fight any longer. If the group split, he and Sasuke couldn't follow them all, so of course their parents would be included as a ready-made distraction to free up the rest. Sasuke knew that, but he didn't seem to care. He gave a glance back and, seeing that his brother was following, turned and continued the pursuit of their parents with all his will. "We still haven't been able to contact the Uchiha front," Inoichi said. "Judging by the way they were cut off, either their radio was destroyed, or no one there is able to use it right now. Either way, they're in trouble. We may have waited too long in getting them to retreat." "Damn it!" Tsunade stood up abruptly from the table and started pacing restlessly. After a few seconds, she stopped and turned toward the sensors sitting around the giant globe of water. "Inoichi, can you get Naruto to send a Bunshin over there to see what's going on?" "Yes." "Understood." Inoichi put his hand into a half-ram sign and went quiet for a moment. They all waited and watched for several minutes as he delivered the message. "What?" Inoichi gasped. "What is it?" Shikaka asked immediately. "Tsunade-sama! Naruto says his younger self is missing," Inoichi reported. "He sent a Bunshin back to the medical camp to keep him company. But when he got there, they realized someone had sent an imposter Bunshin to the camp first. The imposter and the younger Naruto are both gone. No doubt, the imposter was able to talk the younger Naruto into leaving. No one knows where they are. Just one thing after another," I boomed, standing up from the table as well. "We can't afford to be looking for lost children on the battlefield. This is exactly the kind of thing we have been working all this time to prevent. Tell him to send some more Bunshin to the medical camp, and start searching from there. He should be able to sense and find his younger self," Tsunade said. "But we still need someone to check out the situation at the Uchiha front, so have him go there as well." "Why, yes," Inoichi agreed. A few more moments of silence, and he sighed. He said he already did that, and he was able to sense his younger self. Maybe this won't be too much of a fiasco. Have them update the moment they find out anything, I said. Even if the enemy claims that they can't use him for the QB, we can't afford to take any risks. Just then, the large globe of water showed several visible ripples. Everyone stopped to watch the disturbance. "Something new has appeared near the desert front," Ao said, concentrating. "They had all the Kage sealed, but there's still an enemy there. Someone powerful. And there's something else. The masked man is on the move, with some others in tow." "Who?" Tsunade asked. "Have there been sightings reported on either of these disturbances?" Shikaka added. "Nothing yet. They just appeared," Inoichi said. "No, wait." Ao lifted his head up, expression tense. "Hold on, the one with the masked man is Yondaime Mizukage-sama. And the others, they are all former Jinchuriki, as well." "And in the desert?" I demanded. "Has anyone seen what appeared there?" "Not yet." The scorching bright sunlight reflected off nearly white sands, accentuating the desolate feel of this place. This was a rather unusual location to end up in, wasn't it? And that wasn't all. Uchiha Madara looked down at his gloved hands, uncurling them slowly. Something didn't feel quite right. He was no longer an old man, barely clinging to life by siphoning energy from the tree he'd cultivated using Hashirama's cells. That much, at least, was certain. But he wasn't truly alive either. The fiery chakra he took such pride in still burned underneath his fingertips. But it didn't heat his blood, he couldn't feel it in his veins the way he used to. Was this the Edo Tensei? Something must have gone wrong along the way after his death. And where was this? Nowhere close to where the Gedo Mizu was stored underground, that was for sure. Somewhere within the land of wind, Madara started walking, feet sinking slightly in the crystalline sand. If this was the result of someone using the Edo Tensei, who was it? And where were they? He couldn't feel any chakra trying to impose its will on his own, not that it would work, but still. In fact, there didn't seem to be anyone around here at all. No. That wasn't true. Madara paused, listening to his senses. No, this place was far from deserted, actually. He felt the presence of enough people to form several armies, and they were just over that ridge. He continued walking to the edge, where the wind had blown most of the sand off, revealing the baked clay earth. Below, the sun cast long shadows through the natural rock formations of the valley. And there, down in between them, was the great force he'd felt. An army much larger than any they would have seen back in the warring clans era was assembled there. Their headbands all simply said, Shinobi. Yet he could see that they wore clothing and gear from all 5 of the great shinobi countries. That meant this had something to do with the hidden villages. Down there was where he would find answers. But also, Madara cracked a smile. It was nice to move freely again. It might be the perfect chance to see what this Edo Tensei body could do. Chapter 30. Transfer. Naruto felt a mixture of relief and dread as he and Nagato neared the walled-in area where the medic camp was set up. I hope Sakura-chan and Shizen Nichin don't murder me for sneaking off like that, he muttered. They can't blame me for wanting to get out and do something, right? Aha! There you are! The older Naruto came popping out of the bushes, making the younger screech loudly and stumble backwards. Heh, that was actually really easy. Calm down, Naruto. It's the real thing. A real bunshin anyway, Nagato said, catching the younger Naruto's arm before he stumbled into a prickly bush. Damn it, Aniki! Don't scare me like that, the younger shouted, recovering himself quickly and dusting leaves off his pants. That's my line, don't you think? The bunshin said with a scowl. I guess you wandered off with a fake me or something, like you couldn't even tell the difference. Hey! I'm you, so that means that you would have done the same thing, idiot! The younger pointed at the elder stubbornly. You can't call me an idiot! I'm older, and I know more. Are there any sealers at the medical camp? Nagato deflected patiently. Huh! Oh, right. There aren't any here right now, but they're calling someone here so we don't have to get close to the battlefields again. The older Naruto scratched the back of his head. All right. We'll stay here to wait. Okay, what happened anyway? Everyone was really worried you'd be captured again, little bro, the bunshin said as they walked into the medical camp. But you showed up again before we even had time to look for you. I could sense you guys coming this way. I guess Nagato was able to find you before anything bad happened? Kind of, the younger said. There were guards at the entryway. They looked surprised and more than a little wary. Sakura appeared behind them, craning her neck to look. And who are you? One of the guards asked Nagato suspiciously, holding on tightly to the long pole he held. He's with us, it's fine. It's a long story, so don't worry about it. The bunshin waved one hand casually. The guard frowned, but Sakura pushed past them before he could respond. Naruto! What were you thinking, going off on your own like that? Didn't you learn your lesson the first time? I swear, come on, it wasn't my fault. No need to rub it in, the younger grumbled. Sakura sighed. At least you didn't get hurt. Come on in. I guess this means you're going home, huh? The bunshin said as they walked into the camp. There weren't many people there, but the ones that were all stopped to look when they passed. Yeah, the younger said. He looked from his older self to Sakura. We really can't wait anymore. I guess Sai, Niji, and everyone else are off fighting, right? Sakura cast him a sympathetic look. I'm afraid so. We were all put into different units once we got to Kumo. It would be a pain to say goodbye again anyway. Naruto mumbled, scuffing the ground with his foot. Is there anything you guys want me to pass along when I get back home? He jumped when Sakura suddenly wrapped her arms around him in a hug. His older self jumped back as well, screeching in shock. That is from me to you, Sakura said, backing up and smiling. Make sure I train hard with Tsunade Shusho, and don't let me give you a difficult time. I always hated being so far behind you guys, so use that if it seems like I'm trying to give up. I'll make sure you don't give up. If we have to, we'll find Sasuke together. His older self laughed, and walked over to ruffle his hair. Now you're talking! Just say hello to everyone for me, even Itachi and Nagato when you get the chance. But that doesn't mean you have to go easy on them. The bunshin grinned at Nagato, who shook his head with an amused huff. I told you this before, but I don't care what you do regarding me. Just try to save Jiraiya-sensei, if you can, Nagato said seriously. Oh yeah? Ero-sennin can be weird, but listen to what he has to say in training, even if it seems pointless. His older self interjected. I'm not sure everything had a point, but I think most of it did. But isn't there any way I can stop you without Konoha being destroyed, or you having to die? Naruto asked with a frown. I really don't know. Nagato cast his gaze downward. The village's destruction was more than simple revenge. I had grown mostly indifferent to the personal circumstances between Konoha and myself, Or maybe I should say my feelings were blurred. But at the time, I had not been fully aware that Madara's intentions lay elsewhere. I wanted to achieve peace in the real world, even if the method was not ideal. I didn't know what his true plans were. But I did understand he was using us to further his own ends, so when I realized you had what it took to find a better answer, I betrayed him. I always disliked the way he viewed myself, Conan, and Akatsuki. So since you didn't know, you think you'd betray him again if I told you what he was planning? Naruto asked eagerly. I wouldn't recommend it. Nagato murmured. You have the ability to convince me, but the problem is ending up in a situation where you have that chance. As I've told you before, it's simply too dangerous. You won't be able to reach my tower undetected, and then you would be captured. But all the Jinchuriki were taken alive, right? Naruto put a hand on his chin thoughtfully. You are not going to get yourself captured, Naruto, Sakura said, incensed. If you try that, I'll come back in time myself and give you the knock in the head you obviously need. As Sakura-chan. The older Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. If it's Nagato and not one of the others, maybe there is a chance there would be enough time to. Hey! I'm a bunshin, remember? He put his arms up defensively as she bared a fist at him. I understand you want to keep your village from being destroyed, Nagato said, but if you get captured, it's unlikely Konoha will simply sit by and do nothing. If they try to make an assault on Amigakure, it will only lead to them being destroyed sooner. It could even start a war like this one. Oh. Right. Naruto looked down at his feet, thinking, then looked back up. I'll come up with something. I'm not going to let any of that happen. Don't worry too much about what path to take. Just stay alive. That is the best thing you can do for your village, Nagato said softly. Someone was approaching their group, and they turned to look. It was a nervous-looking sealer from Suna, carrying a large roll of cloth in his arms. Sorry it took a while to get here, he said. You're the ones HQ wanted me to meet? Yes, Nagato said. You can seal me at any time. Wait, the younger Naruto said hastily. He turned back to his older self. Aniki, there was something you said earlier, when we first met. He clenched his fists tightly. It was time to ask now, before he lost his nerve. You said you could feel our parents watching over me. I guess that means you know who they are? Naruto looked up to stare his older self in the eye, curious, but a little bit afraid. If what the masked man told him was true, that meant his father had sealed the Kyuubi into him. The Yondaime Hokage. It sounded too crazy to be true, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling, a feeling like he already knew it was, somehow. His older self stared back silently for a while, then the corners of his lips curled upward. They'll want to tell you the full story themselves. It would take a while to explain it all anyway. I'm not sure I can do it justice. He rubbed under his nose with a smirk. But our parents were heroes who saved the village. They loved us a lot, you know? And they'd have wanted to stay and be there for us every day, but they gave up their lives to save the village from the Kyuubi. That's just the kind of people they were. We're a family of proud shinobi that will do anything to protect the people we love. That's what I learned when I finally got to meet them. You will sometime, too, and then you'll understand. But how? Naruto asked, voice cracking. How am I supposed to talk to them? His older self knelt to look up at him, just like when they first met. He poked his younger counterpart in the stomach. They left part of themselves behind inside the seal. Tu-chan will help you if the seal comes close to breaking. Ka-chan will be there when you're ready to use the Kyuubi's chakra. They're watching over you, even now. I wonder what they think about you coming to the future. I bet they're hoping you go home soon. Do you think you're ready? Naruto felt a strange emotion well up inside him, prickling at the corners of his eyes. It was a kind of confused joy mixed with sadness. Maybe he would understand when the time came, but right now, all he could think about were the million different unanswered questions. Why had he been left all alone? If their parents had loved him so much, why had he always been looked at with such cold, judging eyes? I'm ready. He stumbled out. It was finally happening. Naruto scrunched his face against the tears, but it was no good. They started rolling down his cheeks in a steady stream, and he scrubbed an arm across his face to try to get rid of them. Come on, it's not exactly like goodbye, his older self said, standing and ruffling his hair again. The time will pass before you know it. And you'll do great. Everyone here believes in you. His older self's confidence really didn't stop the flow of his tears. If anything, Hearing they truly believed in him made his throat close up even more. But Naruto turned to where Nagato and the sealer were standing. He gave them a nod, then dropped his hands by his sides and tried to compose himself. "I'm starting now," the sealer said. He unrolled a length of cloth and draped it over his arm, looking at them for confirmation. Nagato inclined his head, and the older Naruto gave a thumbs up. The younger clenched his fists and relaxed them several more times, nervousness impeding slightly on his other emotions. The sealer made a hand sign and the cloth sprang to life, rushing forward and steadily wrapping around Nagato's body, efficiently covering him from the feet up. "Thank you, Naruto, for everything you have done." Nagato smiled, face starting to peel and crack. "And for everything you will do." The cloth finished covering him, and seal lines appeared, scrawling down and over each side of the cloth. The sealer let out a breath and eased the sealed body down to the ground. He and everyone else turned to look at Naruto expectantly. Tears blurring his eyes, Naruto looked down at himself, increasingly nervous. He was afraid all their guessing had been wrong. They never knew for sure it would work, after all. But a few seconds later, cracks and lines started to appear on his skin. The lines deepened, becoming three-dimensional, and the sections between the lines began peeling and drifting into the air. Naruto looked back up at everyone, an odd sense of unreality coming over him. It was the same disconnectedness he'd felt when he slipped into the past before. The bond between his soul and this body was weakening. "I promise," he said in his mind, no longer able to say it out loud. Naruto felt himself floating up and away. He was able to look down and see everyone growing smaller for just a second, until everything was awash in white. It was a lot like falling asleep. His eyes might have been open or closed, he couldn't tell. But then, that concept probably had no meaning without a body. Naruto didn't see it, exactly, but he got the impression of someone beside him. It was a tall young man with dark hair and calm, but amused eyes. He'd never seen this person before, but something about him felt warm and familiar, like a face or smell from a long time ago. His clothing was odd, impossible to connect to any village that Naruto knew. "Who are you?" The image faded, washed out in white, but there were others, increasingly difficult to see. The silhouette of a long white coat. A glimmer of red. A blast of hot air on his face. And then, an acidic, inky blackness. But those went too quickly to get anything of substance out of them. He started falling. It would have been terrifying, if it was possible to see anything. But the world dimmed from muffled gray into black, and he lost consciousness until suddenly, he could feel things again. His entire being felt jolted by the sudden weight of it. Naruto's eyes flew open, heart thumping. It was difficult to breathe, and he nearly panicked, but he forced himself to look around without making any sudden movements. Warm evening light from the window showed him the familiar greenish walls of the hospital. The one that no longer existed in the future. He was laying in bed again, a breathing mask on his face, and all kinds of instruments stuck to him. Naruto looked beside the bed, but the chair was empty. No one was there right now. Lifting a hand to curl around the bed's railing, Naruto pulled himself up very slowly. He felt much more awake this time, but his body hurt all over. It was not easy to move. He looked over at the window, trying to get a good look at the buildings outside. He noticed a table with his old Hitayate sitting on it, and a vase with a single cut daffodil in it. It looked fresh. Naruto reached out as far as he could and touched his fingertips to the headband's metal faceplate, with all its nicks and scratches from long use. He shifted to try getting out of bed, but he was hooked to so many machines that doing so pulled painfully in several places. But even from here, he could see that the skyline outside his window was the same one he'd grown up with. He was home. He looked at his hands, and then the rest of his body. It was strange to be back in his own body, too, though it seemed it hadn't fared very well without him. Hopefully a few good meals would get everything back to normal. How long had he been gone? Naruto started pulling out the numerous things stuck on him, wincing at the pain. It probably wasn't the best idea, but he wanted to get out of bed and walk over to the window. Several minutes later, he held on tightly to the bed's rail and lowered his feet to the linoleum floor. The process made limbs shake with effort. His usual remedy of food and a good night's sleep might not work for this, after all. "Oh, damn it," Naruto grumbled. All the time spent thinking about going home, it never occurred to him he might be in such a bad state. How was he supposed to get a head start on preventing the war if he couldn't even walk anymore? And Naruto-chan! Naruto jumped, swayed, and nearly fell. He slowly turned around, holding on to the bed railing. At first he didn't see anything, but then Fukasaku jumped onto his bed, staring at him with his wide mouth agape. Sennin-ji-chan. Naruto was confused. Why was the sage toad here? They never met in this time, right? You're awake! Fukasaku exclaimed, too excited to question Naruto's reaction to him. I need to let Jiraiya-chan know about this right away. That jump-started Naruto's brain. He leaned forward, heart racing again. His hands clutched the railing tightly enough to show his slightly protruding knuckles. Ero-sennin? Where is he? Is he here? Oh, excuse me. I got carried away and forgot to introduce myself. My name is Fukasaku, one of the toads of Mount Maiboku. I taught Jiraiya-chan everything he knows about the sage arts. We've been taking turns monitoring your condition. But where is he? He's not here, right? Naruto pressed. Ah, no, Fukasaku said, looking puzzled at Naruto's insistent behavior. He has been to visit a few times, but things have been busy since you were hospitalized. Right now, he's investigating Akatsuki. Naruto's eyes widened and a frozen feeling of panic washed over him, rooting him to the floor. What if his disappearance caused Jiraiya to go to Amagakure sooner than before? He felt lightheaded. This couldn't be. It couldn't. No! Naruto shifted closer to the toad. He has to stay away from Amagakure. I can tell him whatever he needs to know. I can explain everything, but you can't let him go after Akatsuki. Please, Sennin-ji-chan, you have to stop him right now. Naruto-chan, calm down. Fukasaku hopped closer and put a froggy hand on his arm, concerned and alarmed. What happened to you? We thought it would be impossible for you to wake up after. Forget about that right now, Naruto said impatiently. Just find him and make him come back here, okay? I can explain what happened later, so just go. All right. Fukasaku backed up and looked into his face, eyebrows scrunched. I'll go, but you need to make sure you rest. You shouldn't be trying to walk around. I'll go if you get back in bed and let me call a medic. Naruto ground his teeth together, but he did as the toad said and crawled back up into bed. His breathing was labored, and his body felt weighed down with tiredness. Had the simple act of standing done all that? Fukasaku waited until Naruto lay back down, and then put his hands together in a seal. He vanished in a plume of vapor. Naruto lay on his back, staring at the ceiling as he struggled to breathe deeply and stay awake. One hand tightly grasped the fabric of the plain hospital shirt he wore. He didn't want to see a medic, he wanted to see Jiraiya, alive and unhurt. He just promised Nagato it wouldn't happen again. He promised everyone else that no one would die this time. He couldn't be failing them already, not this early. If only he could get up out of this bed. Why was it so hard to breathe? Was he passing out? Why did it feel like before, when his soul was pulled away? The tiredness made his eyelids grow heavy. No! Naruto growled. He squeezed his hands into fists in an attempt to keep his senses awake. He could feel that inky, sticky presence again. What was it? It didn't feel comfortable and right like the other things from that space in between. Let go of me. His eyelids drooped. I can't, I have to. He could barely feel the nails digging into his palms. If only someone was here, he could at least tell them, warn them about what was happening. Just wait for me to get better, I can do it, just wait. Kyubi, what's happening? Is it the time-spanning incarnation jutsu? What the hell does that mean? Naruto suddenly heard a grumbling voice very clearly, a contrast to the fog taking over him just a second ago. At least, it felt like a second. After the cold, blank darkness took over his mind, who was to say how long it really was? And yet, despite the fact that he blacked out from some dark and suffocating force, he suddenly felt good. Really good. He was no longer tired or in pain at all. And all I've got is this random blonde kid for company. I really hope he isn't dead, though. The grumbling continued. That's just what I need right now, to get cursed by the ghost of some. Naruto sat up suddenly, and the other person screamed. He looked around and saw a boy around his age with spiky black hair, standing with his hands thrown up defensively and a terrified look on his face. I'm not dead, idiot! Naruto said irritably, but his annoyance wore off quickly when he saw where they were. He was sitting in bed again, but this was most definitely not the hospital. It was a windowless, drab room with 2 beds and very little else. The only visible exit was a heavy-looking metal door with a thin horizontal slot in it. A prison cell, Naruto got out of bed quickly, staring with wide eyes around at everything. His body moved with ease, the weakness and soreness from earlier completely gone. "Where are we?" he demanded. He hoped this was just a bad dream. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was at home now, that was it. They won fair and square. "Hey! You can't call me an idiot when you don't even know that much," the other boy insisted. He scratched the back of his head. "Even though I don't really know either. I just kind of woke up here, too. But you've been asleep for a while since I woke up. If only I could figure out what that snake bastard is up to, Snake." Naruto slumped back onto the edge of the bed, staring out in disbelief. "Orochimaru is behind this. If that was the case, did that mean he was back in the future? That would explain why he didn't feel tired anymore. But then, how did he get here? They had sealed Nagato, and both of their bodies had disintegrated. That was supposed to put everything back to the way it was." Naruto looked down at his hands, mind-numbly running around a loop. "Yeah, that bastard came here talking a bunch of crap about incarnation jutsus or whatever, and who the hell are you, anyway? I don't think I've ever seen you before, but you do seem kinda familiar somehow, in a weird way." The boy put a hand on his hip and frowned. "Uzumaki Naruto," Naruto said, without the vigor he usually put into it. He was still trying to figure out what happened. Itachi said that Orochimaru could possibly do it again, but it would be hard to pull off because he needed someone with a strong enough jujutsu. Did that mean he'd figured out a way? "Uzumaki?" The black-haired boy crossed his arms thoughtfully. "So, are you related to Kushina-san? But you don't really look like her. Come to think of it, you actually look a lot more like Minato-sensei. Who are you supposed to be?" Naruto shot back, pointing at the boy. "You've got to be around the same age as me, and you're wearing a Konoha headband, but I've never seen you before." "Hey, don't act like I'm the one who looks fishy in these circumstances," the boy said haughtily. He turned around and pointed at the fan-shaped crest on his jacket. "Uchiha Obito. I'm from one of Konoha's founding clans, and I'm the man who will become Hokage someday. So what have you got?" "Hey, yeah right. If you want to be Hokage, first you'll have to go through wait. Uchiha?" Naruto's eyes fixed on the familiar crest that disappeared as Obito turned back around. "If you're an Uchiha, then that means you're one of Orochimaru's Edo Tensei zombies." He jumped up again, readying himself for a fight. "Huh? You mean like those guys with the creepy eyes guarding this place? They told me about it." Obito pointed his thumb at the door over his shoulder. "But hey, isn't that where dead people are brought back to life? Now who is accusing someone of being dead, idiot?" He pointed at Naruto, looking very insulted. Naruto scratched his head. "It's true you don't look like them, but what else could it be? All the Uchiha are dead." Obito scowled. "What kind of messed up joke is that? Are you looking for a fight?" None of this made sense. Obito knew who Orochimaru was, and he didn't look like an Edo Tensei zombie, but he also didn't know about Naruto, or the Uchiha clan's downfall. "I guess you could be like me, and be brought here from the past, but that means there's another you in this timeline." Naruto gave a frown. He wished Itachi, Nagato, or his older self were here to help him figure this out. "What do you mean?" Obito's dark eyes narrowed. The guards were actually saying something like that. About going through time. But how can that be possible? The only space-time ninjutsu I've ever seen is Minato-sensei's Hiraishin no Jutsu, and this thing sounds way more advanced than that. The clear implication in Obito's tone was that if it was too advanced for his sensei, it probably didn't exist. This masked jerk tried to explain part of it to me once, but it was hard to understand. Naruto admitted. "But basically, this jutsu doesn't make all of you travel through time, just your spirit, or something like that. So if you're like me, that means your real body is back in your own time, and the one you're in now is something Orochimaru made. And there should be an older version of you running around somewhere in this time, because I think it only works on living people." Obito just looked at him like he had a screw loose. "Right. Guess I'll have to ask the guards what's going on again, see if they'll tell me anything useful." He walked over to the steel door and started banging on it with his fist. "Aw, you creepy-eyed freak. Are you still out there? Hey, listen to what I'm saying, Uchiha jerk." Naruto fumed. An Uchiha couldn't really call someone else's eyes creepy, right? "Maybe I don't know all the details, but I've been like this longer than you. I just went back home, and now I'm back in this time again for some reason." "Oh yeah?" Obito turned back toward him. So how am I supposed to know if that's what happened to me? And why would Orochimaru want to bring me here in the first place? Unless, maybe I did become Hokage in the future? I must be a really important person now, come to think of it. Obito rubbed his chin, a spark in his eyes. I've never heard of you, sorry. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. And I know you gotta come from before when I do, because almost all the Uchiha are dead in my time. Plus, my older self here is only 4 years older than me. Obito let his hand drop. Are you saying that really wasn't a joke? What happened to the Uchiha? How could they all just die? Wait, and the village? What happened to the village? Was it because of the war? He grabbed Naruto by the front of his shirt, orange goggles pressed up to his face. Let me go! Naruto said with a grunt, wrenching himself from Obito's grasp. He could understand Obito's reaction, since he'd been like that himself. But still. First of all, I don't even know what time you come from. As for the Uchiha, it wasn't because of a war or anything. Naruto cast his eyes down. He wasn't sure how to even begin. He definitely wasn't the right person to explain the murder of the Uchihas. But Obito had a right to know, didn't he? It wasn't like Naruto wanted to keep the truth from him, not when he knew exactly how that felt. He took a deep breath. I was pretty little when it happened, so I never knew that much about it. But I can tell you what I know. All right, Obito said cautiously. But make it quick. I don't know about you, but... He jerked his chin toward the door, then looked back at Naruto significantly. Naruto glanced at the door. From what Obito said, there were guards outside. But he had no intention of staying put quietly either. Yeah. I agree. Chapter 31 Fire. There's no doubt the others have escaped by now, Itachi said, running along beside Sasuke. They were still following their parents. The fact that they'd split from the other Ito Uchiha made it an obvious distraction. But neither brother had turned away yet. I don't care, Sasuke said in a hard tone. Orochimaru was never going to let us capture all of them. They would have picked off the ASF's forces one by one if you hadn't showed up. So Sasuke had realized what was happening. It seemed at least some of his naivete had worn off these past few years. He'd developed a sense for when he was being manipulated. Still, his temper often left him falling into it anyway. Will you be going after Orochimaru after we seal Mother and Father? Sasuke said. He wants to meet near Konoha. Depending on his explanation, I will continue there alone to take care of the rest of them. I can't just follow in your footsteps, Nai-san. He glanced over. As usual, Itachi kept quiet about his ambitions. Sasuke said it knowing it went against what Itachi himself wanted and believed, but he never said anything against it. He didn't express his opinion of the matter at all. Why did you leave me alive? Sasuke continued in frustrated anguish. If your decision meant everyone had to die, why was I the exception? Dying would have been easier. I told you. I thought you might still have a chance to live a good life, Itachi said quietly. You didn't know anything. It would have been senseless. Was that all? Itachi gave a silent sigh. He'd committed to honesty. No. I was able to secure your safety by agreeing to take the mission myself. I knew it was what needed to be done for the village, but I also wanted you to be protected. Itachi saw Sasuke's face contort before he looked away. He was struggling. You knew the ones handing down that order were corrupt, but you followed it anyway. What about the village is so important that you would betray your own clan for it? I can't make you see it. I can only answer your questions and hope you find some sort of resolution. Sasuke frowned at him, but both brothers halted when they saw that their parents had stopped up ahead and were now turned to face them. Are they going to fight? Sasuke wondered aloud, but his question was quickly answered when their eyes suddenly flared red. Fugaku bent forward and a fierce stream of flame burst from his mouth. Mikoto jumped up behind him and hurled a giant windmill shuriken at them directly afterward. Sasuke and Itachi dodged away from each other. As the flame shot toward them, eagerly devouring the air, shuriken hidden in the flames spun out in many directions. The brothers both activated their eyes to avoid the red-hot projectiles. Just then, Mikoto pulled a wire attached to the first shuriken, and it broke apart into pieces that flew behind the others in a way that made the entire thing very difficult to dodge. It was a double bluff. Itachi skidded to a halt beside Sasuke after jumping and twisting to avoid it, a habit though his ego tensei body couldn't truly be hurt by it. Sasuke had thrown the projectiles off with lightning before any could hit him. As expected, their combination is perfect. Sasuke said. You can seal them, can't you? Yes, Itachi said. His eyes shifted, and the ghostly red form of his Susanoo materialized into view around him. Sasuke followed suit and called his out again. Itachi traced Fugaku and Mikoto's movements, the sword of Totsuka at the ready. Back when he had still been alive, using the Manjiki Sharingan so many times within the span of a few hours would have certainly left him bedridden for days. It made him all the more aware of Sasuke's undeniable potential. Their parents' movements became easier to track using the Manjikyu, especially with the level of control imposed on them. They weren't as quick or smooth in executing their attacks as they should have been. Capitalizing on an opening should be easy, but the memories etched into the Manjikyu were distracting. The images of his parents' faces from that night kept superimposing over the blank, uncaring ones they wore now. Back then, no explanation had been necessary. They had known from the moment Itachi showed up in his A and B uniform. They knew that fighting or struggling would be pointless. Instead, they decided to leave the world with dignity, staying true to what they believed. Despite their differences, they still regarded him with love and respect. Ni-san! What are you doing? Pay attention! Sasuke called out, deflecting another volley of burning shuriken. Itachi broke himself out of the memories, trying hard to concentrate. He wouldn't have thought this would be so challenging. Compared to that night, of course, it was nothing. But the past and present were blending together too much. It was best to end this as soon as possible. Fugaku and Mikoto were getting into position to make another combination attack. Sasuke flanked them, ready to draw their fire if necessary. He glanced back at Itachi, who nodded. He was ready. He turned his eyes back to them, looking for that small moment of opportunity, a break in their attack. The sword of Totsuka flared brightly and shot forward in a long thrust, timed at the exact moment when the two Edo Tensei bodies were in a line. It pierced through them both, causing ash-like particles to fly through the air as they silently recoiled. Itachi bit his lip, again forcing down the memories that tried to assault him. This was far more difficult than he'd bargained for. They were finally still. Their faces cracked even more, little pieces falling and dissolving into the air. Itachi walked closer, making sure his Susanoo kept a firm grip on the sword. Sasuke had stopped moving, as well. He stopped once he saw that there was no way their parents would be able to escape. His expression was unguarded. Their parents' eyes were changing from red to black. The white indicating total control wasn't there. They were coming back to themselves as their souls were starting to lose connection with the Edo Tensei bodies. You did it! Itachi, Mikoto said faintly, hands clutching the glowing sword that pierced through her and her husband. Well done, son! Ka-san! Sasuke stepped forward, dropping his own Susanoo and Sharingan. It made him look even more like his younger self. Sasuke. Well, look at the two of you, Mikoto said, giving him a bright, but strained smile. There is some good in all this, after all. I'm glad I finally get to see you boys fighting side by side. Fugaku was standing behind her, and it looked like he had also regained consciousness. But he just looked at them enigmatically without commenting. Two-san. Sasuke came closer and looked at him, as well. I can't just do what you said before. I can't just forget about the clan and move on. That was what you and Ka-sen gave your lives for, isn't it? You know what those Konoha bastards made Itachi do. How could I just forget about all of that? Fugaku gave an inaudible sigh. Just like Mikoto, his form was crumbling quickly. They wouldn't last much longer. It is no longer our place to tell you what you should do. You are old enough now to choose your own path. What I would have done, what your mother or Itachi would have done, that doesn't matter now. Whatever you choose, as long as you stay resolute in your beliefs. I will continue to take pride in calling you my child. Sasuke's eyes widened. He looked like he'd been struck. You don't have to bear the burden of what we did for the rest of your life. Just live, Mikoto whispered, reaching out toward him. Sasuke took her hand in his, face twisted with grief. No, you didn't. They were the ones who... Sasuke's protest never fully formed. A soft glow surrounded both of his parents as an otherworldly breeze lifted the ends of their hair. Sasuke, Itachi was beside him now. Sasuke's eyes widened when he turned to look at him. His brother was also starting to crumble. What's going on? He demanded, taking one hand off his mother so that he could face Itachi more fully. I thought you would be able to stay. I'm sorry, Sasuke. Itachi murmured the familiar phrase he knew Sasuke always hated to hear. He started to slowly reach a cracking hand toward him. It turns out that this is the last time. I have nothing left to do here, and it's time for me to move on too. Sasuke stood frozen in place as Itachi inched closer. Mikoto squeezed his hand once, before she and Fugaka faded away entirely. The shell of their images shattered and slipped free of the bodies tethering them here, debris falling down to the ground. Itachi's Susanoo faded away as well, as he too started to become unbound. Sasuke stayed unmoving through all of it, until Itachi leaned in and touched their foreheads together. Sasuke blinked. But you don't have to forgive me this time, Itachi said. No matter what you choose to do from now on, we will always love you. The last thread holding him broke, and Itachi's soul followed their parents. Sasuke looked up as he was leaving, visible for only a moment before the glowing, translucent form disappeared. The body left behind disintegrated. Sasuke was left behind with the corpses and ash. He stayed standing in that spot for a long time, staring down at the remnants. Obito stayed silent for a long moment after Naruto told him the story. Uchiha Itachi. Obito's eyebrows scrunched beneath his goggles. I've seen the clan head's son before, but he's just a little squirt. It's him, Naruto said seriously. You and me come from different times. So if he's a little kid how you remember him, that means the you in this time is probably a lot older than the me from this time. Damn. Obito crossed his arms with a frown. You don't seem like a liar, but all this is really hard to believe. How am I supposed to know for sure? Maybe if we could figure out where the older you is. Naruto began excitedly, but stopped himself when he realized once again where they were. His shoulders slumped. But we're stuck in here, and I doubt our older selves know where we are. Have you seen your older self? Obito asked him skeptically. Yeah. And I bet I can find a way to let him know I'm still here. Obito watched as Naruto sat down on his bed with his legs crossed, getting into a meditative stance. Huh? What are you doing? The older me can sense people from a long way off, so I think I might be able to contact him. Naruto explained determinedly. He closed his eyes and started concentrating. Obito gave an unimpressed hum. Well, good luck with that. He went over to the door, probably trying to come up with his own escape scheme. He stood up on tiptoes, trying to peer through the slot in the door. Naruto was a little irked by Obito's obvious doubt, but he wasn't going to let it ruin his concentration. He stubbornly continued meditating, ignoring the other boys' continued mutterings. Even if Obito hadn't fully accepted that they were in the future, Naruto knew that was the only explanation. That meant Orochimaru had brought him back somehow, and that meant getting back home for good was going to be harder than they thought. He hoped the old toad was able to find Jiraiya and convince him to come back home. The process of looking inward went a little more quickly this time. Naruto was in the room with the tall barred gate. He looked up and saw a gigantic pair of red eyes looking down at him. Kyuubi, you're awake, he cried, stepping forward. Are you all right? You looked almost dead the last time I saw you. The great fox narrowed his eyes and leaned down to get closer to Naruto's level. I started to wake up right after Orochimaru placed this seal. But it is still in effect, even now that we've been summoned into a different body. That seal came back with us to the past. What? Naruto gasped. The fox's voice was muffled and distorted, and now that he was paying attention, Naruto could see a slight haze covering the bars. The barrier was, as he said, still there. I guess my original seal has traveled with me this whole time, so it's the same thing, but you said we're in a new body now, so does that mean we've really been brought back? But this vessel feels more stable than the last one. Orochimaru is probably keeping the seal on here to stop you from using my power to escape. Never mind that though. This jutsu. He pointed a long claw at Naruto. Once you left this world, it should have been impossible for him to call back this exact version of yourself from among all the infinite possibilities. You were tricked. The tag he gave you was to attach part of himself to you, so that there would always be an anchor to find you again. Once he tested it, and was sure it would work, he had no reason to stop you from going home. Maybe that was even what he wanted. Naruto's mouth fell open and he took a couple of steps back. Legs weakening, he sat down on the ground abruptly with a small splash. No way. He thought for once they had won. They'd finally gotten themselves one step ahead of Orochimaru and sent him home. And yet, he'd unwittingly told Orochimaru they were about to send him back, and the snake hadn't done anything to stop it. He didn't even try. All he did was talk about this new body, about a transfer. And there was only one way to do that, wasn't there? I had to go back home, in order to be summoned all over again into the new body. Naruto whispered, eyes wide with realization. But he couldn't send me back himself, because he had no way to control Nagato. We did exactly what he wanted us to do. I am impressed. It seems you understand. The Kyuubi growled. You learn pretty quickly, for a human brat. Naruto kept staring down at the floor. He'd only figured out that much because it was just like everything else that had happened up until now, the way they always seemed to play right into the snake's hands. It felt like his brain was stuck, reeling from the fact that they'd all missed it. If Orochimaru had been serious about capturing him, wouldn't he have just shown up himself to do it? Instead he sent a fake, and did just enough to make sure they sent Naruto back as soon as possible. The whole time Naruto was trying to grapple with this new information, the fox continued to study him. So you understand what else this means, don't you, Naruto? The fox lowered his claw until it scratched against the translucent surface of the barrier. We have to find a way out of this ourselves. Stand up. I'm going to tell you some of what I know. Huh! Naruto looked up at the fox, looking back at him. He slowly got to his feet. What do you mean? Just listen. The one good thing about this situation is this body is more stable. That gives us more time to figure out a plan without worrying. Second, we are still connected very faintly to your body in the past. It's a good thing, too, or you'd have ended up in a coffin by now instead of a hospital bed. So all we really have to worry about is how long your real body can hold out. Luckily, you have that slug princess on your side. Wait, if you can still feel the connection with my real body, does that mean you can find out what's happening there right now? Could you possess me enough to listen or talk to someone? Naruto asked eagerly. But the fox was already shaking his head before Naruto even finished speaking. It's nothing but residual energy. You and I are bound to this time by the summoning contract. Someone might be able to undo it from that end if they figured out what it was, but I doubt that will happen. No one knows about this jutsu. Naruto gritted his teeth in frustration. Wasn't there anything else? Okay, if we can't contact anyone in the past, what about in this time? Your other self should be able to sense you, right? I can't sense him, the Kyuubi said, and his many tails started writhing around in the darkness slowly, catching Naruto's eye. Orochimaru's seal might have something to do with that, and he has probably put a barrier around this place, as well. Although, that passage is still there. I just can't feel anything from it. One long, sharp claw pointed over Naruto's head. He turned around to look, and saw the outline of a gaping, dark entrance to a hall he never noticed before. What is that? Naruto looked quickly from the entrance back to the fox. Has that always been there? That is the passage Itachi used to talk to your older self when we were in AIM. But I doubt that would work now. Have you got any better ideas? Try it if you want. Who knows, maybe Orochimaru overlooked something. But no matter what, we need to escape from wherever he's holding us right now. That goes without saying. Naruto punched a hand with his fist determinedly. Me and Obito will find a way out of here, no problem. He could have sworn the Kyuubi made a disgusted face. Use that boy to help you if necessary, but ditch him if it comes down to it. I don't like him, and on top of that, he's an Uchiha. So what? I'm sure he wants to get back to his time just as much as I do. If he learns enough about what happened, maybe he can stop the Uchiha from dying in his timeline. I want to help him. As for undoing the jutsu this time around, the Kyuubi continued, completely ignoring him. We'll have to kill Orochimaru or force him to undo it, making sure he removes the anchor first. But that's impossible for you without my help, so concentrate on escaping for now. Sure. I was planning on doing that anyway. Naruto had already turned to walk toward the dark hallway, and he waved a hand carelessly back toward the fox. All he got in return was a low growl. Naruto walked resolutely toward the back of the room, where the light grew more and more dim. As he walked, everything gradually became silent. He couldn't even hear the breathing and shifting movements of gigantic creature behind him, beyond the barrier and the barred gate. Naruto tried squinting into the darkness when he reached the entrance to the hallway, but it did no good. He couldn't hear or feel anything coming from there either. The only way to know for sure was to check it out. Naruto kept his hand on the wall as he walked. Since it was pointless trying to see, he closed his eyes and tried extending his senses out, the way the old Toad sage taught him. But he couldn't really feel anything either. It was as if he'd stepped into a completely blank void. He walked for what felt like several minutes with no change whatsoever. But then, there was something small, no more than an impression, a feeling that something was different. Naruto stopped walking and slowly opened his eyes. He couldn't see it, but there was definitely something in front of him right now. He reached out and felt thick metal wires woven together, sort of like, no, exactly like an ordinary chain-link fence. It was weird to find something so normal in a place like this, but Naruto guessed this must be the barrier that the Kyuubi had talked about. "Aniki!" he called, looping his fingers through the links. His voice echoed, but that was all he heard. There was no answer. "Hey!" Naruto put his other hand through and tried shaking the fence, but it didn't bend or budge like a normal fence at all. "What the hell is this anyway? Aniki! Other Kyuubi! Can you hear me? Why?" Muttering to himself when nothing happened, Naruto wondered if it would be possible to climb over the fence. Probably not, but it could be worth a try. He started banging his fists on the fence. "Hey, damn it, why won't anything?" Naruto slammed his fists with an extra burst of strength, and the place where it impacted created a sudden flash of white light. It was silent and without heat, but Naruto felt a shockwave of energy that knocked him backwards, completely off his feet. He fell hard onto the cold concrete floor. Opening his eyes, he saw that he was back in the real world, in the room where Orochimaru was holding them. "I dare you to say that to my face, you creepy-eyed bastard," he heard Obito shouting. "Why can't you just stay quiet for once?" Naruto sat up to see someone peering through the slot in the door from the outside. A pair of green eyes with black scara, one of Orochimaru's Edo Tensei summons. Naruto climbed to his feet. The person at the door glanced at him briefly before turning their attention back to Obito. "I told you to be patient. Orochimaru-sama is only holding you here for the time being. You will be released when he is ready for you to be." "And how are we supposed to believe that?" Naruto said, chiming in beside Obito as he walked toward the door. The two of them had just met, but they were already on the same page when it came to staying in this cell. They weren't going to wait around quietly for whatever Orochimaru had planned. "It doesn't matter what you believe. If you wait, you'll see soon enough. It appears you are as impatient as ever, Naruto," the guard said. Do I know you?" Naruto asked with a frown, sidestepping away from Obito, who was looking around at the edges of the door. "In this timeline, yes." The young man's placid voice and what little Naruto could see of his face wasn't familiar at all. "We met right around the age you are now, as a matter of fact. When I was still alive, I worked for Orochimaru-sama. And now that I have been resurrected, I can continue to help him, without any of the physical shortcomings I had in life. A low-level Katan Jutsu will not be enough to melt through this door," he added, eyes flickering back to Obito. Obito clearly didn't care. He finished a sequence of hand signs and took a step back, chest expanding as he took a deep breath. Naruto stepped even further out of the way as the guard's face moved away from the little window and out of sight. With any luck, this could create an opening. Naruto summoned a Bunshin. Obito blasted a long stream of fire at the door, hitting the center of it at first, making flames shoot out of the slot and into the space beyond. He didn't let up in just a few seconds either. He drew out the assault as long as he could, moving from the middle to all around the edges, searing the metal. Like the guard said, it didn't seem to be melting. But maybe, if it could be weakened enough, Naruto held out his hand to the waiting Bunshin. Using his chakra felt slightly slippery, just like the first time he'd come here, but it was barely noticeable. His body was practically buzzing with energy. Was this what the Kyuubi had meant by a more stable vessel? Pouring more and more chakra into it, Naruto tried to make the Rasengan as dense and tightly wound as he possibly could. There was always a limit where he couldn't keep the rapidly spinning energy together anymore, and this time he stretched that limit as far as possible, concentrating hard on his chakra control like the Toad Sage had taught him. The Rasengan was growing increasingly large and heavy in his grip, and the Bunshin kept both hands around it to contain it. The stream of flames slowly dwindled and died out, and Naruto was half a step behind when it did. Obito stepped back, panting and holding the back of his hand to his seared lips, while Naruto and his Bunshin dived forward with a battle cry. He shoved the dense ball of energy into the door as hard as he could, forcing himself to hold strong and not let it unravel away. The door buckled with a piercing whine, folding out to create a gap at the top large enough to crawl through. "Let's go!" Naruto shouted back at Obito. He climbed onto his Bunshin's cupped hands to get a clear boost up and through the opening. Obito didn't waste any time taking his advice. He ran at the Bunshin and let it boost him up too, but his goggles were fogged and that threw off his balance for just a second. He instinctively braced his hands against the metal, and cried out in pain when the red-hot surface seared his skin. "Are you okay?" The real Naruto pulled him the rest of the way through from the outside, yanking at his sleeves. They both tumbled to the ground when Obito fell out clumsily. "Forget it, we have to move!" Obito tried to growl out, though his voice was higher pitched than normal from the pain. He shoved against Naruto as he got to his feet, disentangling them. Naruto glanced back quickly at the destroyed door hanging halfway into the hall. Their guard was still there, standing further back, watching them. Naruto didn't waste time looking for long, though. He and Obito made a run for it in the opposite direction. "Your wound should heal up quickly," Naruto said as they sprinted down the dim, gloomy hall with no sense of direction whatsoever. "Orochimaru summoned us into these fake bodies. They might look like us, but they're not. They are these plant clone things with incredible healing powers." Obito rubbed his goggles with a sleeve and then looked down at his hands, watching the burned flesh and skin heal right before his eyes. He touched his lips and found that they were completely healed, too. "If that's the case, we can fight without holding back. I don't care what happens to a fake body." Obito looked over at Naruto. "So, you've been here longer, right? Where are we going?" "I didn't mean in this place exactly, just the future. But we're bound to end up somewhere if we just keep going, right?" Naruto said, stressed. "Works for me." Obito gave a wild grin. They had no plan, and no idea of where they were going. But it was too late to worry about that now. The only way out was to keep charging ahead. Chapter 32, Incarnation. Naruto felt something was by his cheek, leaving a long, bloodless cut. He looked over his shoulder, and screeched when he saw their prison guard in close pursuit. The white-haired young man held his hands out toward them, and some sort of small, round nub shot out of the end of his fingers toward them. Obito was also so busy looking back that they collided while trying to dodge the bizarre projectiles. "Oi, be careful!" Naruto pushed Obito back, but didn't stop running. Damn it! Taiju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu! The hall instantly became filled with Naruto's copies, blocking the path and view of their pursuer. Naruto pushed Obito down an intersecting hall, and the other boy caught on quickly, regaining his balance and putting on an extra boost of speed to put some distance between them and the guard. "You're pretty good," Obito said as they rounded another corner, trying everything they could to cover their tracks. "But if either of us know where we're going, then how are we supposed to escape?" "You're not bad either," Naruto said with a grin. "We just have to find a way outside, then maybe I can contact someone." "You got any better ideas?" "No, but if we get out, I'm not waiting around for that guy with the weird fingers to catch up." "So unless you can." Obito screamed and halted, violently shaking his foot. Naruto saw a small snake fly against the wall, and he looked down at the floor to see a stream of the things winding toward them. "Crap! Keep running!" Naruto yelled, and the two boys stumbled and kept on running. What else could they do? "I guess this means Orochimaru's caught up to us, huh?" Obito called, jumping over a bundle of snakes with a disgusted look on his face. "Whatever you do, don't let them bite you." Naruto swerved around a snake in his path and ran sideways along the wall before hopping back down to the floor. "There's a good chance these have a kind of venom that's made to paralyze our bodies. Orochimaru got me with it a few weeks ago, but there's so many of them. How are we supposed to do that?" Naruto crossed his fingers over each other to create another barrage of Kage Bunshin. Not to be outdone, Obito jumped up and attached himself to the ceiling. Running through a quick series of hand signs, a large stream of fire came out of his mouth once again, torching the snakes writhing around on the floor. Naruto had to jump up beside him to dodge. "Hey! You'll hit my Bunshin!" And it did, at least a few of them, but most of them were able to get out of the way, yelling and stomping down the hall to delay the snakes further back. Obito and Naruto jumped back down to the floor, now completely cleared of snakes. They looked down the hall where the Bunshin were still struggling, one popping right after the other. "And what are we going to do if Orochimaru shows up himself?" Obito continued, watching them. "Ugh, it's too late to worry about that." Ultimately, their efforts only delayed the snakes chasing them. A huge wave of them suddenly burst through the barrage, their glistening bodies slipping over each other in a large, unbroken mass. The two preteens shrieked, holding onto each other's arms, then promptly made a break for it again without having to discuss it. What the hell? Obito wheezed, eyes wide open with terror. Naruto couldn't have summed it up better himself. Their bodies were strong, but not completely tireless. How long could they continue running aimlessly like this, avoiding the snake's fangs? As it turned out, not very long. After making another turn, they found themselves trapped at a dead end. Naruto and Obito turned around at the same time when they saw the blank wall blocking their path. All it took was that small pause. The barrage of snakes, which appeared to have only grown bigger the longer they ran, rolled over and through them like in a hissing, squirming tidal wave. Naruto tensed and stepped backward as he felt the rough scales brush over his skin, arms held up defensively. He wanted to scream, but he didn't dare open his mouth. He felt several stabs of pain as he was bitten, on the arm, near his ankle, even on his neck. It didn't take long for the numbing effect of the poison to set in. Obito! Naruto tried to say through gritted teeth, but as the snakes retreated, he could easily see for himself the same thing had happened to him. Obito fell to his knees, arms and legs jerking awkwardly as he tried and failed to make his body move. Naruto also slumped to the ground when his legs gave up on functioning. Humph! Naruto looked up to see the Edo Tensei guard walking toward them calmly, a strange, pure white sword in his hand. It looked very sharp. I told you all you had to do was wait there quietly. Did you really think it would be that easy to get away? That's enough, Kimimaro. A familiar raspy voice said, sounding amused. Naruto's gaze slipped past Kimimaro. A few remaining snakes slithered over to Orochimaru and hid themselves in the loose sleeves of his shirt. Yes, Orochimaru-sama. Kimimaro stepped aside to let him approach the escapees. Naruto glared at him, feeling the unique combination of anger and hopelessness that only Orochimaru could instill in him. He almost imagined that self-satisfied smirk was meant just for him, mocking him for believing that going home had been his choice alone. You two certainly have a lot of spirit. Orochimaru chuckled. But as Kimimaro said, all you had to do was practice a little bit of patience, and then you'd understand everything. I didn't bring you here just to keep you locked in a cell, after all. I always knew there was something suspicious about you. Obito snarled, voice strained from the effort it took to speak. You're not going to get away with this. We'll see if you're still smiling once Sandaime-sama or Minato-sensei get a hold of you. He was cut off by Orochimaru's laughter as it echoed through the hall. It didn't sound mocking, but genuinely amused, as if he was delighted by Obito's threats. Naruto had a sinking feeling he knew why, considering Obito's mention of the third. I'm afraid you're a little behind the times there, Obito-kun. Both of our senseis are dead. We actually have a lot in common when it comes to that, but that's a story for another time. Kimimaro, go ahead and take them to their new room. They won't be able to move for a while, given how much of the new formula they took in. Dead? Obito whispered as Kimimaro stepped up and Orochimaru started to walk away. He looked over at Naruto, who was still laying there with his teeth gritted in frustration. Neither of them were able to do a thing as Kimimaro scooped them up and carried them under each arm. He carried them all the way back, past the crumpled door of their cell and up a flight of stairs. Naruto couldn't so much as twitch his little finger. Why are you keeping us here? He said, voice sounding strained and weak. Still trying to get information out of me, huh? You're certainly a tenacious one. Of course, that's part of what makes you so intriguing. I think you already know the answer to that one, Naruto. Hasn't Orochimaru-sama already told you multiple times? Yeah, but in what world is that a good enough ans? You'll just have to wait here a bit. Someone will be along after a while with the antidote. Kimimaro had brought them to a room that looked like it was forged from a natural cave. Unlike the last room, it felt more like a permanent residence. The furnishings were nicer, and it was more spacious. There were still no windows, so they were probably still underground, but the door was completely normal. No bars or locks to be seen. Kimimaro put them each down on one of the beds on either side of the room. We're not going to just stay here, you know, Obito said scornfully. Yes, you are, Kimimaro said. Then he simply left, closing the door behind him as he went out. Still, either of them could move. Once again, Naruto was stuck staring up at the ceiling waiting around for whatever it was the snake was going to do. His soul was quite literally under Orochimaru's control. He might not have tried controlling him directly like one of the Edo Tensei summons, yet, but he had the power to drag Naruto, and presumably Obito, back and forth from the past as much as he liked. How were they going to fight against that kind of power? Hey, Naruto. What? What that bastard said about the Sandaime, and my sensei, is it true? Probably, yeah, Naruto said heavily. I don't know about your sensei, but the Sandaime was killed by Orochimaru. It happened in my time. Orochimaru attacked the village. It figures he would do something underhanded like that. But how could you possibly not know who my sensei is? I figured he'd be the Hokage by now. If it's not me, I mean. Obito paused. Are you seriously saying you don't know Konoha's Yellow Flash, Namake's Minato? I mean, everyone knows him. He's a jounin. And he's blonde like you. No, Naruto said irritably. I mean, his name's kinda familiar, but it's not like I remember everything from the academy. He felt like that was where he'd heard it before. And not just one time either. Maybe it was like Obito said, and he was one of the old Hokage. Wait. Naruto remembered what the masked man had said. The Yondaime, his father, who sealed the Kyuubi into him. He remembered what his older self had said, died protecting the village. What he'd always been told his whole life, that his parents died in the Kyuubi attack. The whole picture was starting to come together. His eyes widened, and he would have jumped up from the bed at the electric shock that went through him, if it were possible. I think he was my dad. Huh? You think? Obito said with unabashed confusion. You don't know your own dad's name? No one ever told it to me, Naruto said, frustration coming through again. I just know he died defending the village from the nine-tailed demon fox. But then, just as quickly, he was struck with another realization. There was someone else he could ask, someone that had been there and seen the entire thing. Of course. Why hadn't he thought of it before? Kyuubi, is it really true? Was it him? Either the fox didn't hear his question, or didn't feel like answering. All he heard for a few seconds was silence, until Obito spoke up again. So in the future, Sensei is dead, and he never got to meet his own son? That's messed up. What? You mean you believe me, just like that? Yeah, Obito said quietly. When I said you didn't seem like a liar, what I was really thinking was you reminded me of him. And that thing you did, with the ball of energy, he can do that too. Naruto turned his head the small amount he could, but all he could see was Obito in the same state as him, laying on his back facing the ceiling. Obito knew his dad, so did that mean he knew his mom, too? And Obito's dazed inability to accept how things had changed in this time reminded Naruto of himself when he'd first arrived in the future. In a way, he was glad he wasn't facing all of this alone. Maybe together, they could find a way out of this mess. Nah, Obito, you know? That's in this time. It hasn't happened yet where you come from, right? That means you can stop it from happening. We just have to figure out how to get back. My Shirsho is dead in this time, too. But I'm going back to save him. I can't save my mom and dad, but you can. And then maybe I can grow up knowing them somewhere. I guess that means you're related to Kushina-san too, Obito said gloomily. But yeah, you're right. Hey, wait. If you're Minato-sensei's son, how have you never met me before? And how come you never knew who he was? I definitely would have told you. Hell, I would have taken you in if no one else was gonna do it. Really? I don't think I've ever known anyone who knew him that well, except wasn't it said that Jiraiya also taught the Yondaime? And if the Yondaime was his father, then shouldn't Jiraiya have known plenty of things about him? Well, what about Rin or Kakashi? Obito said, sounding annoyed. Kakashi? You mean Kakashi-sensei? He's my team's Jounin instructor. You're saying he knew my dad? Knew him. Of course he knew him. Obito burst out, managing to lift his head up a few inches before it fell back down again. That jerk is on a team with me and Minato-sensei and Rin. He never told you stories about us when you were little, or anything? I heard he was in the ANBU when I was a kid. I only met him after I became a genin. It was odd to imagine Kakashi reaching out to him when he was little, like Obito seemed to think he should have. It was odd knowing he might have had a reason to. Figures he would. Obito muttered. I guess that's to be expected from an elite prodigy like him. Okay, but what about Rin? I know she wouldn't let something like that slide. Nope, I don't know her. What the hell? This doesn't make any sense. I dunno, maybe we come from places that are completely different. You know? Like some of the names would be the same, but everything else is some kind of weird other thing. Then again, if Sensei died and it's just Kakashi around, and not me and Rin, could we have eloped? Obito's voice turned into a mumble around then, and Naruto couldn't hear his exact words, but it sounded like he having an intense debate with himself. I don't know, but I say we should find out what happened, and then send you back so you can stop my mom and dad from dying in the Kyuubi's attack. Naruto said determinedly. And I'm going back home, too. I can't just wait around in a place like this. They both fell silent when they heard the door open again. Naruto didn't see anyone at first. He had to turn his head further to the side to catch sight of their small visitor. It was a boy younger than them with silver hair and dark, intelligent eyes that watched them from beneath his wire-rimmed glasses. He paused for a moment at the door before walking over to Naruto's bedside, carrying a small metal tray with various syringes on it. "What is that for?" Naruto asked in a high-pitched voice. He hated shots, and he definitely didn't trust any coming from this place. "Don't worry, it's just an antidote for the venom. Please hold still," the boy said, putting down the tray and lifting one of the needles. Naruto thought his soul might leave his body right then, making it no longer necessary to find a way back home, but he was distracted from his panic by getting a good look at the boy's face as he stuck the needle into his arm. A numb sort of confusion replaced the fear, but it made Naruto feel like he'd just been bitten by a snake again. The boy's face, adorned with those round glasses that seemed too big for him, looked horribly familiar. "Kabuto?" There was no way. "Eh? How do you know my name?" the boy asked cautiously, looking up at Naruto and pushing the edge of his glasses back. "But they said you were dead. I don't. Are you an Edo Tensei?" It's possible the poison has caused you some confusion. Please try not to push yourself," Kabuto said politely. He removed the needle, now empty, and placed it back on the tray. "What's with you and thinking everybody's dead?" Obito put in from across the room. "Do you know this kid or something, Naruto?" No, I'm afraid your friend is mistaken," Kabuto said, turning to walk to Obito's bedside with the tray. "I don't know how he knows my name, but we've never met before." "I know Kabuto from my time," Naruto said loudly. "And this time, too, he's the one who brought me to the future to begin with. But he's older than me, so what, you think Orochimaru brought in a past version of him, too?" Obito lifted his head to try to look at Naruto, but caught sight of the new needle Kabuto was wielding. What are you going to do with that?" "There's no need to be afraid. It won't hurt." It had to be that, didn't it? It was the only thing that made sense, and yet it didn't, because Kabuto was dead. But this one didn't look like an Edo Tensei, and anyway, wasn't part of this new jutsu's power the fact he could call someone from all different points of their life? He couldn't do that with the Edo Tensei, right? "Why are you here?" Naruto demanded, aggravated by Kabuto's complete calmness. Some feeling was starting to come back into his limbs, and he flexed a hand slowly. "Why aren't you a prisoner like we are? Are you working for Orochimaru? Please rest and take it easy. It will take a while for the poison in your system to clear." Kabuto came back over to him, sounding genuinely concerned. "Yes. I was brought here to work for Orochimaru-sama, so my orphanage can receive the funding it needs. I was also told to assure you that you aren't prisoners. You're only being held here for right now." "Huh?" Naruto was still confused, but he felt a little less numb now, so he shakily sat up. "Okay, but why? And if we're not prisoners, then what exactly do you call holding us here against our will?" Kabuto hung his head regretfully. "I'm sorry, that's all I was told. In any case, there is no way for you to get out of here before Orochimaru-sama is ready to release you. You will only get hurt if you try. You want to bet on that?" Naruto moved, slowly and jerkily, but he moved, pushing his feet to the edge of the bed and over. He was confident this wasn't as bad as the state his real body was in back home. The same weakness may have been there, but not the pain. "Naruto-san, please, you shouldn't try to get out of bed yet." Kabuto's silver brows scrunched together worriedly as he watched him. "Come on, Obito. See if you can move around some. We're going to slip out again while they're not expecting it." "Yeah." Naruto held on to the edge of the bed as his legs wobbled and threatened to give out underneath him. "That is really not a good idea." Kabuto hovered beside Naruto uncertainly. "If you try to do that, you'll just be knocked out and brought back again." "Maybe so, but that'd be the case if we waited, too, and right now I bet they don't think we'd be going for it again," Naruto said determinedly. He pushed off from the side of the bed and held his arms out, swaying from side to side for a second before regaining his balance. He turned around, one little step at a time, and took a few slow, heavy steps toward Obito, who was trying to sit up. Kabuto followed him. "Please don't do this, you'll get us all in trouble. And then I'll be sent back, and Mother will have to earn my share too." Naruto wasn't paying attention to his soft-spoken pleas. "Obito, see if you can stand up. Hold on to something if you have to." "Ugh. I don't know if I can, but I'll try. It feels like I can barely move." "Stop it," Kabuto said a little more strongly. If you don't, I'll run out right now and tell them what you're planning." "Huh?" Naruto turned his head to look over his shoulder. Wah! The act of twisting his head in a different direction from his body made him lose balance, and he stumbled to the ground with a pained grunt. "Are you all right?" Kabuto knelt down by his side and put a hand on his shoulder. "You see, you can't make it very far like this. Just lay down until the poison is gone." "We're not." Naruto wrenched himself off the floor enough to rest on his hands and knees. "We're not going to cooperate with whatever they're keeping us here for. I don't care if it seems pointless, impossible, or whatever. Even if everything we do is somehow part of it, and it looks like we can't win, we won't know if we lay down and do nothing." He turned his head to glare sidelong at the child version of Kabuto, who flinched and scooted backward. "Are you happy staying here, Kabuto? That's what you should really be worried about. Don't you want to go home at all?" Kabuto folded his hands in his lap and looked down. "I do miss Mother, and my friends. But I can't go back to the orphanage now. They depend on funding from Konoha to keep going. The village needed an orphan to come work for them and become a shinobi, so I volunteered to go. If I go back, they'll just take someone else, or worse, Mother will have to carry the burden by herself." "Do you really think this is Konoha?" Obito asked from where he was sitting on the edge of his bed. He'd finally managed to pull himself up. "It's Orochimaru. And he's probably not even the Orochimaru you know. He brought us here for some kind of experiment. Naruto says you're older than him in this time, so you're probably the same as us and brought here from the past. How are you going to help your mother or whoever when you're not even in the same world anymore? What are you talking about?" Kabuto stared at Obito wide-eyed and stood from Naruto's side. "There's no time to explain it right now. We're going to stop this jutsu somehow, and then you'll be able to go home, too." Naruto pulled one of his knees up, braced his hands against the floor, and began working on using his legs to lift himself off the ground. It was an agonizingly slow process. "So don't worry. 'Cause we'll make sure to put an end to it. Just stay here and we'll definitely, huh?" Naruto glanced up when he felt Kabuto's hand on his shoulder again. He felt a pinch on his arm, and looked over at it to see Kabuto injecting him with another syringe. Wait! What is that?" "Another dose of the antidote." Kabuto pushed up his glasses. "You won't make it out of here without getting caught. But at least with this, you'll be able to move a little bit better." "Kabuto," Naruto said, stunned. The feeling in his arm was rapidly coming back, and that was spreading to the rest of his body. There was a small glint in the boy's dark eyes, and Naruto remembered what Orochimaru said the first time he'd been immobilized by the poison. "I can't fully take the credit for this one. This is a poison Kabuto discovered that suppresses the Shodai cells." Despite what happened to Kabuto's older self in the end, Orochimaru still acknowledged him on some level. That was why he was here. Hadn't Itachi said that Orochimaru was fascinated by potential? So then, did that explain why Obito was here, too? Heh. Now you're talking. Naruto grinned. He pushed himself to his feet slowly and carefully. The extra antidote was helping, but it would still take a few minutes to really work. "Okay, now give some more to Obito, and we'll be ready to try again." Chapter 33 Mirror. It was surprisingly quiet in the hideout. Naruto and Obito crept slowly from one hall to the other. They couldn't move well enough to run yet. Obito was recovering from the poison more slowly than Naruto, and he had to hold onto the wall with both hands for support while they walked. "I know you said we'd find the way out and everything, but how are we supposed to do that without running into anybody? It's not like we can fight them right now." Obito grumbled quietly. "That might not happen if we keep quiet," Naruto said, looking up and down the halls as they met a corner. He motioned for Obito to keep following. You remember what Kabuto told us right before we left. Orochimaru is still busy directing stuff in the war, so he's probably not gonna worry about us too much right now. And if there's only 5 guards for this whole place, we can definitely avoid them. Maybe in here, but what about when we find a way out? They'll be watching the exits. The younger Kabuto had given them what information he could, but he still insisted they wouldn't make it out without being caught. Only he and Kimimaro were helping Orochimaru inside the base, but the other 4 guards were outside, keeping anyone from getting out or in. It would take a lot of luck to get by them without being noticed. That explained why they weren't bothering to keep Naruto and Obito locked up anymore. They were that confident the two wouldn't make it past the guards. Heh! I've been sneaking around the ANBU since I was a little kid. This won't even be a challenge, Naruto said, a touch arrogantly. Obito raised a brow. So what you're saying is you don't have a plan? Are you sure you're Minato-sensei's kid? No, not 100%. I told you that already. Naruto scowled. What's that got to do with anything anyway? We can't make a plan if we don't know what we're up against. That's why we have to face them head on now. If we don't make it, then we'll have something to go by for the next time. It's a win-win. Sounds like you just made that up. Hey, shut up. I don't see you coming up with any better plans. Obito shifted his body so he leaned on the wall with just one hand, testing out more weight on his legs. I've got one right now. I say if we do get caught this time, we should cause enough damage to make Orochimaru show up again. We're going to have to fight anyway if the guards catch us, right? So we'd see what we're up against, like you said, but then we can find out more about what's really going on here. I want to talk to Orochimaru himself and get some answers. I guess he hasn't been around because of the war, but I wonder why he's still bothering with it, anyway. I thought he didn't really care about it. What war? You guys keep talking about the war, but in my time there was the war, and I'm really hoping it's not the same one. Nah, this one's new, Naruto said, frowning. He paused to look and make sure their way was clear before they turned another corner. It's kind of a weird war. It's not the different countries fighting against one another. It's just everybody against this one guy, with Orochimaru helping him. How is that a war? That sounds kind of dumb. No offense. There's more to it than that, alright? They're the ones behind everything, but they actually have a ton of people, things on their side. Orochimaru summoned a bunch of Uchiha as zombies to fight in the war. And these Edo Tensei guys can't be hurt or killed. On top of that, they have those clone plant things. And the one behind it all is Uchiha Madara. Madara? Like my ancestor, Madara? Hasn't he been dead for a long time? I don't know. Things with the war have been so weird and messed up. I've seen a lot of unbelievable things already. Naruto shook his head. I met Madara one time. He told me about the jutsu Orochimaru used to bring us here. But the important thing is, Madara is trying to gain enough power to cast a genjutsu over the entire world. He wants to make everyone live in a dream controlled by it, so there's never any more fighting. What? That just sounds like he wants to control everyone. Naruto wasn't so sure. He thought the same thing when he first heard about the enemy's plan, but after talking to him, he got the feeling the masked man's motives were genuine. If anything, that made him more dangerous. But it was hard to explain that without going into way more detail about the meeting than he wanted. So that's why everyone's standing up to him. The 5 Kage made an alliance with each other, and they're probably out there trying to stop Madara right now. The older me is with them, too. He could probably help us, but maybe it's a good thing I can't contact him. The people of this time need his help in the war. So the older you is pretty strong? Obito tilted his head curiously. Did you grow up to be cool like Minato-sensei? Ha! The older me is definitely cool. And strong. And badass. And completely awesome. Wait, are you trying to say I'm not cool now? I wish I could find out what my older self is like. Are you sure you don't know anything? There's no way your older self is more awesome than mine. But maybe you've been on some kind of top-secret spy mission in a foreign country since I was little. Naruto guessed. That does seem very fitting for a man like me. I bet once I awakened my Sharingan, I had no trouble rising through the ranks. I probably even made Jounin before Kakashi. Oh hey, stop. Look down there. Obito dropped into a whisper. He leaned his shoulder against the wall and peered down a hall they were just about to walk past. Don't you think it looks different down that way from what we've been seeing? Different how? Naruto stopped and looked down the hall. Just like everywhere else, the passage was lit with eerie torches in the shape of open-mouthed snakes. It was long, and ended with a wide stone staircase lit from above. You see how the floor goes from wood to stone at the end? And it's wider through here, too. I bet those stairs lead to somewhere. Naruto squinted, trying to see the far end where the light came from. It almost looked like sunlight streaming down onto the first few stairs, and now that he was paying attention, there was a noticeable flow of air coming from that way as well. It's gotta be the way out, Naruto hissed, seizing Obito's arm. Come on, you have to move faster! Don't pull me! Besides, what if this is another trap? Obito edged along the wall, staring down the path as they crept a little closer. Even if it is, the worst that can happen is we'll get chased by snakes again. Great! Obito pushed off the wall to test his balance, then started walking toward the end of the hall beside Naruto. Both of them were a lot steadier on their feet now, and Naruto was confident they could make a run for it if they found themselves outside. He looked behind them when they reached the foot of the stairs, then turned back to look up and saw sunlight and trees. But he didn't see anyone around besides the two of them. I'll go up there to look around first, Naruto whispered. Wait, shouldn't you send a bunshin or something instead? Obito glanced over at him. Right, okay. Naruto was impatient, but that probably was the best thing to do. He crossed his fingers over each other and called up to Kage Bunshin. What's the other one for? He's gonna go back and stand at the end of the hall, in case anyone comes this way while we're waiting here. The first Bunshin saluted them importantly, then trotted off down the hall. The other one sidled up the stairs, stopping at the top with half its body above ground and half below. Hey, do you see anything? Obito asked in a carrying whisper. Blue stuff, the Bunshin said. Huh! Obito looked at the original as if asking for a translation. Could you be a little more specific? Naruto called/whispered with his hands cupped around his mouth. Just come and look. I don't see anybody. The Bunshin motioned for them to come closer. Naruto and Obito glanced at each other, then climbed the stairs. They soon emerged into a green, lush forest, the kind that felt like home. Did that mean they were in the land of fire? Sure enough, there didn't appear to be anyone around. But when they looked up and through the trees, they could clearly see a huge, translucent blue wall enclosing the entire area. I get it now. This must be the only way in or out of the base, Obito said. Okay, so all we have to do is bust through that barrier. Ha, good luck with that one, kid. Unless you think you can break through the work of a barrier master. The voice came from behind them. The three whirled around to see a girl sitting on the ground behind the entrance to the base. The blue walls came together at a 90-degree angle, and it was this corner she sat in, leering at them through the sheen of blue that encased her. I was wondering when you kids were finally gonna show up. It's been so boring here with nothing to watch but the squirrels and birds. The girl inside the barrier smirked at them. Her eyes were mostly black, another Edo Tensei. What happened to you not seeing anyone up here? Obito shot accusingly at Naruto's Bunshin. What? She was hiding over there. But see, there's blue stuff, just like I said. Notice what's actually important next time, idiot, Naruto said, grabbing his Bunshin by the collar. Well, I'm you, so what does that say about you? That's it, you're out. Hey! Stop ignoring me, you damn brats! The girl snarled. They all looked over. The Bunshin in Naruto's grip stuck its tongue out and poofed out of existence. Yeah, who are you anyway? What is this? Obito commanded. HN. It's about time. My name is Tayuya of the North Gate. And you kids should be glad I can't move from this spot. Just looking at your idiotic faces makes me want to kick both your asses into next week. I can't believe Orochimaru-sama wants me to keep up a barrier for a couple of pansy-ass genin. I am not a genin. Obito growled. I'm a chunin, and one who's gonna be promoted to jounin really soon. Really? They must have been willing to promote anyone back during the war days. Obito's face reddened, and he stomped over to where Tayuya was sitting and kicked the barrier surrounding her. Come out here and fight me, then. I'll show you. Hey! Get your dirty foot away from me. I'm seriously thinking about breaking this barrier to teach you a lesson, you little shit. Tayuya, you do that and you'll have more to worry about than just these kids. Kimimara's voice came from the entrance to the base, and they all turned. Naruto, who was closest, got into a fighting stance. Obito stopped kicking and turned around. Only Tayuya seemed unfazed. Relax, it's not like I was actually gonna do it, pretty boy. What happened to the bunshin I had watching the hallway? Naruto demanded. He knew from the time spent training at Mount Miyaboku that his bunshin should have transferred its memories to him if it had been dispelled. How did he not know someone was coming? Kimimaro sighed. I'm surprised you thought something like that would be difficult to get around. Your clones aren't exactly attentive. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like the two of you to come back with me. You've wandered far enough. Naruto looked back at Obito, who gave a small nod. They didn't stand a chance right now, but what did it matter? The bunshin Naruto had left in the hall suddenly jump-tackled Kimimaro from behind, wrapping its arms around his neck. Naruto took advantage of the distraction to create more clones, but even though he was aiming for at least 50, only about a dozen appeared. Before he had a chance to rally the troops, Kimimaro appeared right in front of him, moving incredibly fast. Naruto caught sight of his green eyes standing out starkly against the black Edo Tensei Skara just before Kimimaro kicked him hard in the chest. Air rushed out of him and he flew backward, slammed hard into the barrier, then slid to the ground. His clones instantly took the opportunity to attack Kimimaro once again. Are you okay, Naruto? Obito knelt beside him as Naruto slowly started to pick himself up off the ground. Do something to keep that guy occupied. Naruto grunted as he got into a sitting position. I'm going to try going into Sage mode. It's the only thing that might stand a chance of breaking through this barrier. You're gonna what? Just do it, okay? I need you to buy me enough time to gather energy. If you say so, but whatever you're going to do, try to make it quick. Obito stood and ran into the fight along with Naruto's clones. Naruto closed his eyes and tried to concentrate. It was completely against his instinct to sit still and not fight, but it was the only thing he could think of. Never mind that he hadn't once pulled this off successfully yet, he knew it was possible if he just kept trying. He could do anything his older self could do. Sense the natural energy in the air. Feel it flowing through everything around you, touching and connecting everything in existence. He could feel it. As usual, it felt heavy, almost overwhelming. Fukasaku had said that it was drawn to him. The danger was trying to control that energy once he drew it in. The few times Naruto had managed to tap into the natural energy, it had always been far too much, tipping the balance out of control in an instant. But as he'd been told by Jiraiya, and Iruka before that, the key to making something like this work was focus. Of course, he never tried to do this in the middle of a fight, with the yells and shuffling intruding on his senses as Obito tried to buy some time. Memories from a dispelled bunshin interrupted him every few seconds. Focus, focus, Naruto commanded himself desperately. Just like the Rasengan. It was about the right amount, the right balance, with external energy thrown into the mix. Simple. He could feel the energy prickling the surface of his skin, embracing him like a friend. It started to mix with his own energy very gradually. He was being as careful as he could. Naruto fought to ignore the excitement clawing at him as the energy started to combine with his own. Almost there. Just a few more seconds, and there would be enough to. Kimimaro! Stop daydreaming and get over here. This kid is doing something. Taiya's voice cut through his concentration from very close by. He was still sitting near the barrier. Naruto frowned, an involuntary movement as he tried to quickly regain focus. He opened his eyes, saw the world shift strangely for just a second, but it wasn't enough. He went tumbling backwards once again as Kimimaro kicked him, rolling for a second before ending up flat on his back. All the energy he'd gathered completely dissipated. Kimimaro loomed over him. It's clear the two of you still have a lot to learn. He stepped on Naruto's chest and raised two long, sharp blades, then brought them down to stab into the palms of his hands. Naruto yelled out in pain and made to kick his attacker, but his strike was blocked by sharp spikes that suddenly burst from Kimimaro's body. Obito ran up and tried to throw a punch at him, but Kimimaro captured Obito's arm in the crook of his elbow and more spikes burst out, digging into Obito's trapped arm. Obito screamed and tried to pull away, but the action drew the spikes into deep gashes, tearing the sleeve of his coat and into the skin underneath. He jumped back holding his arm, blood pouring from the tattered sleeve in thin rivulets. As you have realized by now, I am able to transform the bones in my body at will to use in both offense and defense. You should give up trying to land a hit on me. Naruto looked at the strange white sword stuck into his hands. Though it hurt, the pristine material was completely unstained. Obito, don't forget that's not your real body. Whatever he does to you, You can make it go away in a few seconds just by thinking about it. Naruto called. He closed his eyes and grit his teeth, then sat up, yanking his hands as hard as he could to free them. The sharp edges slicing through his hands stung terribly even though it didn't bleed, but he ignored that and kept going. Kimimura's eyes widened in surprise as Naruto lunged toward him. Kimimura's ribcage shot out in an instant to block the strike that Naruto and a couple of his remaining bunshin aimed at his chest. Naruto's foot ended up trapped, and alarm bells in his mind went off as he realized the same thing that happened to Obito was imminent. This is completely futile. Kimimaro swiped his spiked fists at the two bunshin, dispelling them. Then he shoved Naruto backward, and the latter lost his balance and fell on his back again, deep, bloodless lines scraping painfully into his leg. You're forgetting something very crucial in this fight. I am Edo Tensei. We can tear each other apart all day long, but unlike the two of you, I will never tire or run out of chakra. I am surprised you are managing so well after being paralyzed by the venom, but this is a losing battle for you. What, it's over already? What a ripoff. Taiyuya complained from the corner. Naruto stared up at the blue ceiling of the barrier high above their heads, desperately wondering what to do next. They hadn't even managed to stir up enough trouble to bring Orochimaru out. Undo the seal. Use my power. Orochimaru's seal will be destroyed then, too. We can get rid of his hold over you and escape from here. Naruto screwed his eyes almost shut, squinting as he considered what the QB said. Maybe it would work. Maybe it was the only thing that would work. But what if it was a trick? What the fox was saying sounded too much like how he would try to persuade Naruto to give up control in the past. I want to go back too, remember? The QB snarled. But that wasn't the only thing. He'd already seen what happened when some of the fox's power leaked out and reacted with the strange cells that made up the plant bodies. What would happen if it all came out at once? Naruto asked him. And how am I supposed to get past Orochimaru's seal to reach it, anyway? The QB didn't answer. He seemed to be considering Naruto's thoughts. Maybe he'd expected outright rejection. Kimimaro kicked again, and Obito landed beside Naruto with a thump and a grunt. All of Naruto's clones were dispelled, and the boys weren't in great shape. It was just as Kimimaro said, they had no chance of winning. If you two want so badly to fight, you'll get the chance soon. Kimimaro stared down at them coldly as all the bone spikes sank back into his body. It's surprising you managed to use your jutsu, though. I wonder if perhaps you were given a higher dosage of the antidote than we intended. No, we're just good at surprising people, Naruto said stubbornly. How should we know, anyway? Obito retorted. You two are going back to your room, and you will stay underground from now on. You're free to move around the base, but come here again and you will be locked back in a cell. Obito was mumbling curses under his breath as Kimimaro pulled them to their feet and dragged them back into the hall, continually pushing until they started walking on their own. Even though this body is more stable, he thinks it will still react if you were to let my power out completely. That would ruin everything for him. That's why the seal is still there, even now, the QB said. Huh? Naruto wondered, confused by the sudden intrusion. The only thing he has left to test is where that line is. Would you start making sense, already? What are you talking about? Orochimaru is going to force you to use my power. He wants to see how much this new body can withstand before it starts corrupting, like before. What? Naruto abruptly stopped walking, earning him another shove in the back from Kimimaro. But that, how do you know? You remember what he said earlier? He wants you to be able to use my power, but this jutsu is one that has never been done before by anyone. You, as a Jinchuriki, bring extra complication into it. It makes sense he would summon more test subjects. But if he wants you to have access to it, why keep the seal on? You said earlier it was so I couldn't escape. There is more. He doesn't want you to try using it to escape, because he doesn't know how much you can withstand now. If the plant body starts transforming out of control and absorbs all of my chakra, we will both die. Orochimaru has already invested so much time into this particular version of you that he doesn't want to risk it. You've become valuable to him. So what's your point? I don't want to die either. We can use that against him. He will have to loosen or remove his seal in order to do a test like that. And since you're valuable to him, if we can escape in that moment, we will have some leverage to work with. I don't really get what you're saying, but if you really think he's going to take that seal off soon, I definitely think we should try to escape then. They had arrived back at the room. Kimimaro gave them one last push into it, warned them again about going above ground, then left. He closed the door behind him, but though Naruto listened, he didn't hear a lock being turned. "Are you alright? You were kinda spacing out there," Obito said, sinking down glumly onto his bed. "Why yeah," Naruto said, caught off guard by the comment. "I was just trying to think of a way we can get out of here." "Yeah, me too. How are we supposed to get past that stupid barrier with Orochimaru and that creepy bone guy around?" Naruto wasn't sure what to say. He wanted to share the possible opening for escape the Kyuubi had seen, but that would mean he'd have to explain his Jinchuriki status to someone he just met. But it was probably going to be hard to avoid it forever, especially if the Kyuubi was right about Orochimaru's plan. Hey Obito. Huh? Obito looked at him and blinked, thrown by the sudden seriousness in Naruto's tone. "You remember how I said my parents died fighting against the Kyuubi?" "Yeah? Don't tell him about me, idiot brat. He's an Uchiha." "Well, there was a little more to it than that. I didn't know much about how it happened before I got here, but my dad didn't just make the Kyuubi go away. He sealed it. Inside of me. I'm what they call a Jinchuriki." Obito's mouth fell open, and Naruto hurried to say more, seized with a sort of mild panic. "Like I said, I'm not completely sure how it happened, and I just learned really recently who my dad was, but the older me said he did it to save the village. That I'd understand it someday, and I don't, but yeah, that's basically it. I can't believe he would do that." Obito frowned, and the relief Naruto felt from that one statement was both strong and unexpected. "I know it's after my time and everything, but I can't imagine him doing that to his own son." Obito stayed silent for several seconds, then looked up at Naruto again, examining his face like he was looking for something. "Is that what this?" He touched his own unblemished cheeks. "Probably, yeah." Obito crossed his arms and seemed to consider it a little more. After a minute of silence, he started speaking again in a gruff tone. "I guess I don't really know either. I do know Minato-sensei would do anything for the people he cares about. He's one of the nicest people I know, but also one of the smartest. It's almost scary sometimes, how good he is at planning ahead. There have been times during missions when he would ask us to do something, and we wouldn't understand it at all, not even that smart-ass Kakashi, but we would do it anyway, because we knew he was always looking out for us. And every single time, it turned out he was brilliant, and had seen something that no one else had seen. This is probably like that too." Obito's attempt to comfort him was even more unexpected than his acceptance. Naruto kind of wanted to cry again, but that was embarrassing, so he forcefully pushed the urge back. He cleared his throat and continued with what he wanted to say. "Anyway, that's one of the reasons Orochimaru brought me to this time." "But the Kyuubi says, whoa, wait, you can talk to it?" Obito asked, leaning forward interestedly. "Has it said anything about me?" "Naruto," the fox growled. "He keeps yelling at me for telling you stuff, 'cause he doesn't like the Uchiha." Naruto sat down on his own bed and casually stretched out. "But listen." Naruto explained everything the Kyuubi had told him about his theory, about the seal Orochimaru had placed, and the possibility of him loosening it as a test. That inevitably led to him explaining more about the war, how Madara had stolen almost all the bijou for his plan, and what Naruto had been doing in the future up until he thought he'd found a way home. They talked for a long while, taking stock of the situation. After learning how both the younger and older Naruto were connected with the war and Orochimaru's own stock in it, Obito only had one question still left unanswered. "So then, why me?" "Don't worry, we're going to find out. Even if we have to beat an answer out of him," Naruto said determinedly, punching one hand with his fist. Chapter 34 Awakening. Hay passed the next day without incident, which was in itself remarkable. At least, it might have been a day. It was from the time they woke up until the time they went to sleep again. It was impossible to tell time accurately inside the underground lair. The only other person they saw was Kabuto, who came back to check on them again. They tried persuading him to come along with them on their next escape attempt, but he declined. It seemed he was determined to remain on Orochimaru's good side for the sake of his mother and friends. As frustrating as it was, they could hardly fault him for that. It didn't matter anyway. They were going to find a way to save themselves and him. If they found a way to undo the jutsu, they could all go home. Thinking they might be able to find scrolls or other hints around the base, and having nothing better to do, Naruto and Obito spent a lot of time exploring. Because they never went above ground where the barrier was, either Kimimaro nor anyone else ever tried to stop them. It was eerie, traveling the halls in the semi-darkness and silence. They filled the time with chatter and joking to dispel the creepy atmosphere. Orochimaru had to be somewhere inside the base. How else could he direct the war while keeping an eye on them? But despite the hours they spent scouring the place, they never caught sight of him. It wasn't until the next day, when they stumbled upon a room they hadn't seen before, that they finally found out why he'd taken the trouble to imprison them together for all that time. I can't believe we missed something this big before. What do you think this room is for? Naruto leaned over the rail to look down into the large, circular room. It reminded him of where they'd had the Chunin exam preliminaries, except it was round instead of square, and the floor below was lined with mysterious doors. They stood on the balcony overhead, looking down to the dim and empty room. Obito pushed his goggles up to get a good look. Those doors have to lead somewhere. Let's go check it out. He braced his hands on the railing and vaulted over it, landing smoothly down below. Naruto quickly followed. There was no other way to get down to the bottom. Okay, let's start with this one and work our way around. Naruto motioned to the door nearest to him. He turned and reached for the door handle, only to lower his hand when he realized it was missing. Hey! That's annoying. There's no doorknob. Obito looked around. There's not one on any of these. Guess we'll have to break in. You shouldn't do that. I'd rather you stay here a bit longer. The two boys snapped their heads up toward the balcony. Orochimaru looked down at them, grinning widely. Kimimaro stood by his side and a respectful step back. It's about time you showed your stupid, ugly face again. Obito yelled, snapping his goggles back over his eyes as if preparing to fight. There's something here you don't want us to see, is that it? Naruto pointed at Orochimaru dramatically. Oh, you're not here to do any sightseeing, I'm afraid. Sorry it's been boring for you while I've been busy with other things. I promise that right now, you have my full attention. A crawling, prickling feeling worked its way up Naruto's arms at the statement. He had a feeling it wasn't a coincidence they ended up here. Naruto glared up at him with fists clenched. Whatever you're planning to do, we deserve some answers. Obito, I know you've told him everything, and that you've figured out part of why I brought you here now. Orochimaru interrupted. Though I'm sure you had the Kyuubi's help. I can't see what goes on in your mind, but with my control tag, I can see through your eyes and hear through your ears. It's similar to the way I use my Edo Tensei summons. What? Naruto's thoughts were derailed, going from defiant to extremely confused. Orochimaru could see and hear everything he did? Was that literal? Since when? The control tag, you mean since Suna? Orochimaru just smiled. He seemed content to let him figure it out himself. A cold feeling swept over Naruto as he stared into Orochimaru's eyes, those sinister yellow eyes he often felt watching in the space between consciousness and unconsciousness. It shouldn't have been much of a surprise, given the Kyuubi had already told him that Orochimaru could use the control tag as an anchor to drag him back from the past. But the snake had never used it to control him, so it seemed relatively benign. So easy to forget with everything else going on. Orochimaru started laughing, first as a low chuckle, growing into a full-bodied laugh that echoed all around the empty room. The laugh he despised, the one that could have his anger boiling in a matter of seconds. I was around them all that time. I put everyone in danger. Naruto snarled. Why did it always turn out like this? Always. You've done a good job of cultivating your anger. Orochimaru gestured toward him. I hope soon we'll see results that merit so much effort. He disappeared. Naruto took a step backward, putting his fists up. He knew what was coming a split second before it happened. Orochimaru slammed his hand into the seal he'd placed before, making Naruto give a pained grunt and slump over. Hey, what did you do to him? Obito demanded, taking a swing at Orochimaru, who simply stepped away just as he'd come, landing back on the balcony. Worry more about yourself, Obito-kun. This is meant as much for you as it is for me. What the hell does that mean? Naruto, are you okay? Obito shook his shoulder. I'm fine, he just took off that seal blocking the Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto wheezed, using Obito's arm to pull himself up. An uncomfortable pins and needles feeling was starting in each of his limbs, as if his whole body had to adjust to the circulation of the new chakra. He'd never realized how much of a constant presence it was before, but the Kyuubi had said, Wait, Obito, you have to get away from here. I'm not leaving, are you stupid? Obito shook him again, this time out of frustration. You wanted that block to be gone, right? You'll be fine. We should run away while we've got the chance. No, it isn't that. He's about to. Naruto's voice became gravelly as he leaned over, holding the seal like he had a bad stomachache. He couldn't speak anymore. He wanted to keep telling Obito to run away, but it was getting harder and harder to move his mouth. You're right. You deserve a little clarification for all your hard work, Orochimaru said calmly, holding his hand up in a half-rammed seal. Yes, Suna is where everything changed. After I suppressed Kabuto, I wanted to bring you under contract with me as soon as possible. Itachi and Nagato were loose ends, and I couldn't let you slip away because of them. My control tag brought you into contract with me. The rest should be obvious. Naruto couldn't answer. He was straining to move even the smallest amount. No? Inane, you lost your hold on the world because I sent you home. I wanted to test the contract, and undo the trap Itachi had put on you. I didn't manipulate the ASF into sending you home because I couldn't do it myself. Undoing the jutsu by sealing Nagato stopped being a possibility before you met him. I just wanted him out of the way. Naruto was still hunched over, clutching the seal that steadily burned. He couldn't stand up, because something heavy was holding him down. It was power energy. It smoldered and stung, but it also felt good. It was an answer for the hopelessness that tried to gnaw at him. Naruto. He's choosing to tell you this now for a reason. He expects you to react emotionally. Get a hold of yourself. The Kyuubi growled. I released the jutsu when Nagato was sealed, so they would believe they'd successfully sent you home. I needed to undo it again anyway, to summon you back using this new body. Let's see, did I leave anything out? Oh yes. Obviously, the reason you can't move right now is because I am controlling your movements. Can't have you trying to escape just because you can use the Kyuubi again. Naruto tried to look up at Orochimaru, to move his head, to do anything, but it was no use. He could feel the power coursing through him, but he wasn't directing it. The desire to use the Kyuubi's power faded quickly once this sunk in. The fox was right. I won't do something just because you want me to. Naruto growled in a low tone with all the effort he could muster, unable to speak any louder. His anger was settling down into a dull roar, no longer all-encompassing. But the burning feeling throughout his whole body did not stop. Stuck halfway hunched on the ground, Naruto could see the nails on his hands lengthening into sharp claws. The burning was so intense it made his thoughts go numb. That was when everything became a white-hot blur. Stop whatever it is you're doing. Let Naruto go. Obito shouted at Orochimaru, positioned defensively beside his new friend with absolutely no idea how to help. But he had to do something. This was his sensei's son, after all. All the times Minato been there for Obito and the others, teaching them, talking to them, those were all things his son should have had too, but never got the chance. It was all because of the Kyuubi, and people like Orochimaru who wanted to use it for their own selfish goals. Obito didn't understand why his older self hadn't been there for Naruto the way Minato was for him, but now was the perfect time to correct it. Or it would be, if only he could figure out how to help Naruto break free from Orochimaru's control. Come on. Stand up. Obito pulled on Naruto's arm. We can bust through one of those doors, and figure the rest out from, what? He let go and took a step backward when he realized Naruto's eyes had changed from clear blue to a dark red, with angry-looking slitted pupils. The whisker marks on his face thickened, and a bubbling aura of energy materialized around his entire body. Naruto finally climbed to his feet, slowly, turning to face Obito just as a single tail-like formation grew from the aura. He remained slightly hunched, hands low. The form is still stable at one tail, Orochimaru said smoothly. Now, what about two? Obito looked up at him, and then back at Naruto, eyes widening when he saw a second tail beginning to form. He wasn't sure exactly what that meant, but it couldn't be anything good. Glancing back from Naruto to Orochimaru again, Obito quickly came to a decision about what to do. The only way to stop this was at the source. Obito dashed to the edge of the room and jumped onto the wall, ran up until he was on level with the balcony, then he pushed off and launched toward Orochimaru. Orochimaru didn't make a single move in defense, and neither did Kimimaro, who was still watching from further back. Instead, as Obito shot toward Orochimaru, he felt something wrap around his leg and throw him hard to the ground. Intense pain unlike anything he'd ever felt shot through the affected limb, and he gave an agonized cry while trying to roll out of the thing's reach. It was like someone applied a hot iron directly to his skin. Obito saw a huge, ephemeral claw draw back and rejoin the aura surrounding Naruto, which had grown even bigger, and did it have 3 tails now? He looked down and saw that the aura had burned through his pants leg, leaving welts on his skin that were a very dark red, almost black. He spent a couple of seconds trying to think them away, like all of his injuries before, but they remained. Interesting. So that's how the Kyuubi's chakra reacts with those cells in its corrosive form, Orochimaru said, leaning over the rail to get a better look. We need to take extra care that it doesn't damage his own vessel. The 4th tail was when it became damaging to his human body, so perhaps we will keep it below that number until we see whether or not Obito-kun's injuries heal. Doesn't the 4-tailed cloak cause damage over the entire body? A much larger scale, Kimimaro said. A small mark on the leg isn't enough to fully test the cell's healing capabilities. Very true. Perhaps there should be a bit more. What? Obito gasped as Naruto stalked toward him slowly, crawling on all 4s now like a feral beast. His face was pulled into a snarl, showing pointed teeth, and his eyes were unfocused. It was like he didn't recognize Obito at all. And Naruto. Obito tried scrambling to his feet, but putting weight on the injured leg sent another wave of agonizing pain through it. He cursed loudly and stepped back and sideways out of Naruto's direct line of sight, hopping slightly as he went. He was breathing heavily after the pain and struggled to run. Come on, you have to snap out of it. Please. Naruto's head turned toward him slowly, and then he gave a loud cry that was halfway between a screech and a roar. The bubbling energy around him formed into a gigantic claw again and shot toward Obito. He managed to throw himself to the side to avoid it, and the claw went crashing through the wall, creating a hole the width of several doors. Dust and shattered pieces of brick flew everywhere, and Obito put his arms over his head to block the sharp projectiles. It felt like the entire place might come crashing down soon. Naruto screeched again, a haunting, terrifying sound. The 3 tails elongated and swung around wildly, and the concrete underneath his feet cracked. Obito squinted through the debris, mouth dry and fear gripping him at the sheer power he could feel from the 9 tails chakra. There was so much noise and destruction that he might be able to get away through the hole in the wall, even with an injured leg, but he couldn't just run away and abandon Naruto to this cruel treatment. How far was Orochimaru willing to go for this? Would he let Obito die? Was he really just an expendable extra to him, put here for the sake of this one experiment? Obito got to his feet again. He would not die. He would save Naruto, and they were both going to make it the hell out of here and back home. But how, against his better judgment, Obito ran toward Naruto instead of away, jaw clenched and eyes frantically darting, watching for his next move. The animalistic features made him barely recognizable, but the most disturbing part was how blank Naruto's expression was. Was he even aware of what was happening? Obito crouched down as one of the tails whipped out and tried to knock his head off. He thought himself lucky to have avoided it. The color surrounding his friend had grown even more vibrant. The immense power almost hurt to look at. As Obito ducked down, pain shot through him again, causing him to lose his balance and roll over onto his back. Naruto jumped over him and gave another ear-splitting wail, raising a clawed hand up high. Obito flinched at the swift movement, throwing his hands up defensively. It was too late. He closed his eyes, then opened them again, squinting at the figure above him when, after a beat, nothing happened. The great claw made of chakra hovered right above his chest, sharp points aimed to rip him to shreds at the slightest movement. He locked eyes with Naruto. The claw started to retract, and the corrosive energy roiled and sank back down into Naruto's body. Obito sat up quickly, staring in disbelief as Naruto's eyes faded back into blue and the claws and teeth grew back to normal. Naruto's eyes closed, and he slumped to the ground in a dead weight. Naruto! Obito pushed himself up and hobbled to him, turning Naruto over. He just looked unconscious. The corrosive energy hadn't put a scratch on him anywhere. What did you do? He demanded of Orochimaru, who was still watching them from above with a self-satisfied smile. NGH. Naruto stirred slightly. So, he hadn't lost consciousness. Obito looked back down at him and tried shaking him more awake. Naruto, can you hear me? Are you alright? Ugh, huh? Obito? Naruto looked like himself again, no longer blank or frightening. He looked up and around at the destruction of the room, then at Obito. What happened? Whoa! He exclaimed after looking at him, jerking back a bit in surprise. Obito, your eyes! I thought you said you didn't have the Sharingan. What? Obito yelped. He quickly took off his goggles, but there was nothing reflective he could look into. He tugged his Hittite loose and squinted into it, hoping to see something in its polished metal surface. Everything in it just looked like blobs, but there were red blobs where his eyes were. He was sure of it. Obito was excited for about 5 seconds before he remembered. Kyuubi-cloaked Naruto had turned back into regular Naruto after seeing his eyes. You're going to regret this. He turned to glare up at Orochimaru with his new eyes. You can't keep using us like this. We're not your toys or your minions. I guess all that was meant to scare me, huh? Not entirely, Orochimaru said. You're much more useful to me with that Sharingan of yours. Without it, you might as well be ripped apart by the Kyuubi. I'd say we accomplished a lot today. Naruto grabbed Obito's arm. What happened? I remember I couldn't move, and then A terrible expression came over his face and he let go, staring around at the destruction of the room like he couldn't believe the evidence in front of him. Obito hated to admit it, but he'd appreciate even Kakashi's help right now. The Hitachi was a world-class jerk, but he was also good at planning, good at figuring things out in stressful situations. Let's just try to make it through that hole in the wall, alright? Obito hissed quietly to Naruto. First we have to get away, then we can worry about the other stuff. There was a sudden loud crash from the vicinity of the damaged wall, and a telltale shriek of lightning jutsu. Obito spun around wildly, eyes widened in disbelief. He already half expected to see Kakashi wielding his chakra blade, charged with lightning. There was another crash, and more of the brick wall exploded outward. Kakashi? Obito wondered out loud, coughing in the dust that was kicked up by this new explosion. Someone stepped out of the dust, but it wasn't Kakashi. Obito didn't know who it was, but it was obvious from a glance he was an Uchiha. If his face and hair weren't clue enough, his eyes definitely had the Sharingan, though it was a pattern Obito had never seen before. Sasuke! Naruto coughed. The dust had gotten to him, too. Obito looked at him, and then back at the Uchiha. That was Sasuke? The one on Naruto's team? But he didn't look like— wait, that was right. It was the older version of Naruto's teammate. You found us, Orochimaru said. I didn't think Kabuto would slow you down much, but you got here sooner than I expected. Did you fetch Karen first then? No. Suigetsu has been to this base before. Why weren't you at the place we agreed to meet? My apologies, Sasuke-kun, but you were taking a very long time, and it couldn't wait. I would have explained it to you when you got there, if you hadn't killed the snake bunch I left for you. Obito saw a tall, broad-shouldered man behind Sasuke on one side, and a shifty-looking guy with white hair on the other. He had no idea who these people were, what they were talking about, or what was going on. But neither Sasuke's group nor Orochimaru were paying attention to them right now. This was the perfect chance. Hurry, he murmured, pulling on Naruto's arm again. While they're distracted. Come on. Naruto seemed to wake up. He looked at Obito, then glanced at the gaping hole where the wall had once been. You go ahead and go. I need to talk to Sasuke. What? This isn't the time for that. Obito tugged more insistently as Naruto tried to turn away. Talk to him some other time, when Orochimaru isn't over there ready to control you, or put that seal back on, or whatever else. Obito, just get out, you don't have to be caught up in, I'm not going to leave you behind. Even if you are a dumbass. Their squabbling made Orochimaru's yellow eyes flicker over to them for a second. Obito practically dragged Naruto in the direction of the opening. Ugh! Naruto flinched. He was no longer resisting, but he slowed down, his free hand going to his stomach again. It burns. Shit! Obito hissed. This wasn't going to work if Orochimaru took over Naruto again. He had no idea if getting them out of this room would help at all, but it was the only thing he could think of. Kimimaro, make sure our little mice don't scurry away. I'll give Sasuke-kun the chat he wants, Orochimaru said. Kimimaro jumped down to the floor gracefully. Cursing under his breath even more, Obito hobbled and pulled Naruto away as quickly as he could. The wall was crumbling. It didn't exactly look safe, but it was the only way out. He looked back over his shoulder. Kimimaro had paused for some reason. Obito couldn't see or hear what was going on very well, but the tall man beside Sasuke had called out to Kimimaro, interrupting his steps. That was all Obito needed. He turned back and trudged forward with his mouth set in a grim line. He was worried about Naruto. That aura of corrosive chakra hadn't reappeared yet, but his skin was burning. It prickled uncomfortably at Obito's hands and the back of his neck as he pulled Naruto's arm over his shoulders. That energy was truly like a sentient being all on its own. They reached the crumbling opening, and someone called at them from in the room. Obito hurried to climb through while dragging Naruto, his grip tightening in panic. There was a loud crash from overhead. Was someone attacking? There were more shouts. It was completely dark in the hall. Would this even work? The barrier outside was still up, right? Another crack directly above them. This one went on for several seconds before something heavy fell right in their path. Obito backpedaled as quickly as he could, swearing up a storm. The entire hall was caving in. Stepping backward, his heel caught on a chunk of debris in the darkness, causing them both to lose their balance and fall. He bumped his elbow painfully, but worst of all was the split-second realization that falling pieces were spilling from above, too many to get away. Kimimaro, Jugo said, eyes wide. The shock of seeing him here so suddenly left him completely stunned. Kimimaro stood from the crouch where he'd landed and paused before turning to Jugo. It is good to see you again, he said with a small, but genuine smile. We can catch up after I take care of this. Jugo, focus on Orochimaru, Sasuke said. The command made Kimimaro frown. I don't want to fight with any of you, but if you plan to move against Orochimaru-sama, I will have to. He looked from Sasuke to Jugo. Suigetsu edged away from all of them, in case things turned ugly. Don't worry about this group, Orochimaru said from above them. Just bring back the other two. We can resume the test after Kabuto sees to their wounds. Understood. Kimimaro gave a nod. He turned from them and started toward the other side of the room, where Obito was climbing through the destroyed wall. Are you sure it's all right, Sasuke? Suigetsu muttered, sidling up beside him. That was the younger version of your old teammate, right? From what we heard, wasn't he supposed to have been sent back? All of them turned as a loud series of crashes shook the entire room. Kimimaro stopped, then rushed forward into the cloud of dust that spilled out from the hole. Do we have to have a chat here? This whole place is falling down, Suigetsu shouted, looking up at the ceiling warily. All the noise and stress was too much for Jugo. His body started melding into gray. With a wild yell of his own, he started to punch the wall, destroying even more of it. Okay, that isn't going to help. Sasuke! Suigetsu turned to him, sounding annoyed, but also melting a little bit around the edges from all the chaos. Sasuke could see the collapse had distracted Orochimaru, as well. Judging by the way he leaned over the rail and looked to where Kimimaro had gone, this was not something that had been within the snake's calculations. He almost looked ready to jump down there himself. What is it? Orochimaru called as Kimimaro came out a few minutes after he went in, completely empty-handed. Kimimaro climbed all the way out and looked up, brows knit in consternation. We should clear out everything to make completely sure, but they aren't there. The hallway was blocked ahead, and they weren't under the piece that fell close to the entrance. They disappeared. Naruto opened his eyes a slit. He was laying on a hard, cool surface, face pressed down by a weight on the back of his head. He remembered drifting in and out for a while, ever since Orochimaru started controlling him. But now, that heavy, oppressive feeling was gone. Naruto braced his hands against the floor and pushed himself up, moving out from under Obito's arm. Everything was dead quiet here, but where was here? At first he thought they must be locked in a cell again. But as he looked around, he realized this place was far too big for that. It was so large that he couldn't see the walls or the ceiling. Was it even indoors or outdoors? All Naruto saw was a bizarre expanse made of white blocks and square columns of varying heights. There was enough light to see everything, but no hint as to where it came from. It just gradually got darker further and further away, until the edges were completely obscured. Hey, Obito, wake up! Naruto tried to shake Obito awake, but he just rolled over with a push and didn't move. The young Uchiha's face looked very pale. Was there something wrong with him? Hey! What happened? That was worrying. Just as soon as Naruto felt in control of himself again, Obito had to go passing out. What if Orochimaru and the others were nearby, yet it didn't seem like they were. No matter how much he listened, he couldn't hear anything. and they had no reason to hide. Naruto stood up to increase his line of sight, but it didn't really help. Surely if there was anyone else here, they'd stand out against all these white blocks, right? Sasuke? Anyone? Nothing changed, no matter how much he called. There was just silence, and the strange geometric landscape that stretched into infinity. Where the hell are we?